So, boom, boom, got it done. That's the way to do that. Get it done for everybody. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I don't know if we're going to have umbrellas to get out of here again or not. I hope you didn't ride your motorcycles. I know some guys did over there, and I don't think that's a good idea unless you go home pretty quickly. We are going to talk about another subject as part of talent development and the team that we have in an organization. Not just the new folks, but the team that we're developing. We're going to talk about negotiations tonight and kind of the art of negotiation, a little bit about what's going on. We're going to do some simulations in class, and I'm going to talk about it to start with from the perspective of my favorite author, who is Dr. Seuss. And then we're going to end up with a video about another guy that's written a lot of stuff on the art of negotiation, including a book called The Art of Negotiation. And you can negotiate anything and negotiate this. A guy by the name of Herb Cohen, who I think was the nation's probably top expert in the field, at least in my opinion. He negotiated for the United States for several presidents. Jimmy Carter, going back a lot of years. Henry Kissinger had him on his team, and they negotiated the Camp David Treaty with Israel, and the Paris peace talks were underway when he was involved with that, and he learned a lot and shares a lot about it. He's a Jewish lawyer from New York, by his admission. And so we'll get his viewpoint on negotiation, even though it's an older video we're going to watch. He's passed away, and so we're if we want his knowledge, we got to go get it. And I think his knowledge is worth us knowing. When you have somebody that has negotiated at that level, they've become quite accomplished, and there's stuff that we can learn. So we're going to end up class with that. The start, I'm going to talk about the cat in the hat. And I think you'll remember this because some of you had it read to you when you were kids, and some of you have read it to kids or heard it to your brother. I'm not going to read the book, but remind you how it started out. The sun did not shine. It was too wet to play, so we sat in the house all that cold, wet day. I sat there with Sally. We sat there, we two, and I said, I wish we had something to do. Too wet to go out, too cold to play ball, so we sat in the house. We did nothing at all. So all we could do was sit, and we did not like it. Not one little bit. And then something would bump. How that bump made us jump. We looked, then we saw him stepping on the mat. We looked, and we saw him, the cat in the hat. He said to us, why do you sit here like that? I know it's wet, and the sun is not sunny, but we can have fun. Lots of good fun that is funny. I know some good games we could play, said the cat. I know some new tricks, said the cat in the hat. A lot of good tricks. I'll show them to you. Your mother will not mind at all if I do. Then Sally and I did not know what to say. Our mother was out of the house for the day, but our fish said no. Make the cat go away. Tell that cat in the hat you do not want to play. You should not be here. Should not be about. You should not be here when your mother is out. And there begins a negotiation by the cat in the hat via Dr. Seuss. If you want to read about another negotiation, read Green Eggs and Ham by Dr. Seuss, and you will hear Sam I Am say, I do not like green eggs and ham. And that whole story is about the negotiation to get Sam I Am to the point where he ultimately says, I can live with green eggs and ham. And you remember that story too, probably. And so Dr. Seuss has taught us a few things. We already talked in this class about On Beyond Zebra, how Dr. Seuss taught us that there's a whole lot of language and a whole lot of stuff that can't be done with the alphabet we know from A to Z. You've got to invent new stuff. You've got to see it from different perspectives. And I think that there's a lot of really important knowledge coming from kids' books sometimes. And those are three books that all three are by Dr. Seuss, that I get a kick out of. If we look at the process, the negotiation process that we see there, the cat started out by establishing a need. Pointing out that they didn't like sitting there. It was raining outside. Yeah, it was. They were stuck in the house. Yeah, they were sitting in front of the window staring, and he saw they were about stir crazy. And they needed to do something. So it shouldn't have been a very hard sell once you've established the need. And he did establish that need right away, and he had their attention. So he starts selling with his best pitch. He goes, I know a whole bunch of stuff to do that's really fun. Any kid this tall is going, oh yeah, really? What's that? I mean, they want to know. I got tricks. What do they want? They want to see your tricks. I mean, that's how you get a kid. You know, here, we teach kids not to take candy from old men like me because, you know, they're selling something, right? And we tell them to be cautious. So the Cat in the Hat is selling with his best pitch, and I quit when he got his first no. It was from the fish. He overcame the no. He ignored it at first, then he argued with the bit, and he appealed away from the fish because cats and fish typically have problems. The cats love the fish, but the other way around is not so much. And so it was expected that the fish would say no. And Dr. Seuss wrote that right in for us because taking no for an answer is something we have to do a lot when we negotiate. We have people that we propose our best propose, whatever this is, a brand new oak wall bed, and we lay it all out, and we propose it, and we get a no. Or we try to get a contract somewhere, and we get a no. So the sales cycle, the negotiation cycle, the influence cycle often has a no attached to it, usually early on. And we are going to look at it from a couple of perspectives. One of the books that we're going to reference, and you're going to have a handout, you do have a handout, it's entitled Getting to Yes. And I gave you this handout because this is simply a outline of the book. It's not a summary. It's not designed to, instead of reading the book. It's a book that was published a while ago based on something that was called the Harvard Project. And it became the best-selling book in the art of negotiation. And it became the best-selling book because of this. They had more data than anybody else. Harvard cut deals with Fortune 500 companies saying, we're Harvard, we want to study the negotiations that you go into. We want to be a quiet mouse on the wall. And we want to watch what happens in your negotiations. We want to study them in our classes. And we will come back to you if we learn stuff and tell you how you can get better at your negotiations. They signed all the confidentiality documents and all that stuff, and they installed cameras in the boardrooms of a whole lot of companies between Philadelphia and Boston, New York City having its fair share of it. These are Fortune 500 companies, so America's biggest companies. They've got cameras in the boardroom. The boardrooms are where negotiations are at. The customers come in, they sit down, and they look at acquisitions. They look at mergers. They negotiate contracts. They negotiate deals. This is where the United States military buys its stuff from Lockheed and Boeing. They sit down in conference rooms, and they talk about the specs. They talk about the jet fighter that needs to be built. And it's all negotiated in conference rooms. Harvard mic'd them up, put them on video cameras. And then over the years, they started this in 1971, and this project is still going on. They still are doing this, and they have recorded tens of thousands of negotiations. And they have broken them down and studied them through several generations of professors that have taught the program on negotiating at Harvard. It's considered one of the best negotiation programs in the United States, maybe the world. They are basing it off of data. Because what was interesting is they would sit in on a negotiation on tape. They'd review the tape, and by the time they review the tape, they know if the negotiation was successful or failure. So they can read what's happening in the room, and now we know what the ending was. Did that work? Or did it not work? Where did they blow it? How did they blow it? What went wrong in that negotiation? Did they really not have the right answer to come to agreements? Or did they mess up the negotiations? And what they found is there's a lot of human psychology in negotiations. And you have seen people walk away from stuff they shouldn't have walked away from just because they're pissed. If you know anybody that's a realtor, they've seen a lot of that. Everything gets together. You got a buyer and a seller that are ready, willing, and able to sell a house and to buy a house, and they get to the closing table, and one document, it's got something weird on it, and mom walks away. You go, wait, what happened? Well, I didn't agree to that. They want to keep the chandelier. It's a $400 chandelier. Let them keep it. You're going to walk away from this deal that you really want over something silly. And negotiations break down. The realtor misses their commission. The loan officer doesn't get to put together the loan deal. And they don't get the house they wanted. And the seller's on the market now for longer. It all went south because of something silly and a failed negotiation. Failed for the wrong reason. Now, there are right reasons for negotiations that fail. There are walking points that we have to be willing to walk away. And we as a business need to talk about that, figure that out, and know that. So the book that was written that became a seminal book on how to do it was this book called Getting to Yes. And the three authors of that book, all three have been lifetime professors at Harvard, and they have been involved in the Harvard Negotiation Project. And so they've been, one of them's a psychologist, and so they are looking at negotiations not from a business point of view, they're looking inside the brain. What's going on? Why do people do what they're doing? What are the signs and signals that you could have read? How could you have predicted how this was going to go? And Harvard's collected tons of data on that. So, that's the book, Getting to Yes. If you're going to someday read a book on negotiation, that'd be on the list of ones that I would consider. There are hundreds of books out there on negotiation. And anybody that's got an idea can write a book and publish it, and people might read it. Some of them are okay. Some of them are crappy, and a few are really, really good books. One of the really, really good ones that was a response to Getting to Yes was a book that Jim Camp wrote that says, you got to start with no. So there's a book out that sells everything Getting to Yes, and then he writes one that says, not about getting to yes, you got to start with no. So and his premise for that is, it's a good book too, it's a counter book on the human psychology, because what he says is, if you do a deal and you never got a no, you left money on the table. That's too good to be true. You could have got more. And maybe you should have got more. And so he says, start the negotiation when you get the no. Dr. Seuss got the no to Cat in the Hat when the goldfish says no. And that, Jim Kemp says, okay, as soon as the goldfish says no, now we have a negotiation. Because up until then, it was just, he established a need, it's raining outside, I got tricks and fun and things we can do inside. As customers, Sally and I, we wanted to do it. The fish jumps in and says no. So now we get, because up until that point we had no negotiation. Cat in the Hat, sold it right off the bat. Sally and I were in. But now we got a problem. We got a no that we have, now we have to negotiate. Because we got stuff to negotiate because mom's going to come home sometime. You know, and the Cat in the Hat hasn't really thought all of that through at this point. He's getting the no, and when we get a no, one of the things we have to be aware of is that it can all fall apart at any time. Now the fish thought it was going to fall apart as soon as the cat's involved and it's in the house and he's going to do tricks. The fish knows that's good because fish has this much water in that bowl. And when that's gone, fish is in trouble. So fish knows there's a problem. The negotiations can fall apart at any time. when they do fall apart. We have a choice of walking or trying to piece it back together. And if it's something that our company wanted to negotiate for, we want the team to understand that what can go wrong in a negotiation will go wrong. I referred to realtors. If you know a realtor, they already know this one. What can go wrong will go wrong. The cat in the hat, his approach to when it did go wrong, because his trick was balancing on the unicycle, right? Remember that? He's balancing on the unicycle, ripping through the house. He's got the rake on his nose, and he's got something else up on the top of the rake, and the fishbowl's up there somewhere too. And so what can go wrong with that, right? You've balanced stuff through the living room, and if you're a dad, awesome, because dads should do that every now and then. But what can go wrong will go wrong. Don't let the negotiation stop. Clean up the mess. And that is what Cat Hat did. He invented at that point, it's still no problem. Don't worry about your mom coming home, because we got time. Yeah, I fell apart. Fish isn't dead yet. We're good. This is still going to be fun. I got 2 things you don't know about, thing 1 and thing 2, and he brings them in, and they still have fun, right? I mean, they're scared to death. But at the end of the day, they had fun. And that was what the Cat in the Hat was negotiating for, and that's what he got. He closed the deal. He stayed all day until that one moment when you see Mom's shoes coming through the window on the sidewalk, looking out the window, right? Mom's almost home. The cat's swirling around with the last second. And he gets out in time. Sally and I are sitting at the window like nothing's happened. Mom walks in. What went on today? Oh, nothing. And we're going, that was close. We had a lot of fun. It was crazy here, but it wouldn't have happened if the cat hadn't successfully negotiated. So that's what we want to look at. How do we negotiate? The definition of a negotiation is any agreement in which either party can veto the deal. That's a negotiation. And we have them between 2-year-olds and their moms in church. That's any negotiation, is any agreement in which either party can veto the deal. 2-year-olds have figured out how to veto the deal. And we all keep just adding to that knowledge, right? We all know how to veto the deal. We all know how to do that. And so a negotiation is where it's successful where neither party does veto the deal. We do the deal. That's a successful negotiation. A failed negotiation is where us or the other party vetoes the deal. So success and failure has to do with whether somebody exercises their right to veto the deal. So we're going to look at it from a business point of view first. There are at least 5 types of negotiations that I want us to kind of rip through in our mind. I'm going through this to kind of establish a basis of what I want us to see from her. But a couple things I want us to do. We're going to do a couple of examples of some negotiations ourselves. We have negotiations with suppliers. We have negotiations with customers. Those are reasonably obvious. We have negotiations within the organization between teams and departments and the engineering and the installing guys, and we've got different departments that negotiate back and forth. The business itself is sometimes in a negotiation where we buy another company or we sell off or spin off part of the business, and we have lots of regulatory agencies that have the ability to shut us down or endorse us or make our life miserable. And IRS is one that comes to my mind. OSHA, the EPA, the FDA. We've got the National Electric. We got the fire department. We got all kinds of regulatory. Every business has all kinds of regulatory bodies that can spoil our fun and can make us have to do something. Typical business negotiations, we're typically negotiating about price. We're negotiating about delivery, and we are negotiating about the quality. And the interesting thing is when you're looking at that, at least in some of those relationships that we're talking about, we want it free, we want it now, and we want it perfect. We've just become to believe that Amazon really can deliver in a couple of hours. And in parts of outside of St. George, that's real, right? You order something from Amazon, it's on your doorstep before you even have put your credit card back in the wallet, And of course, you didn't need to get your credit card out. If it's Amazon, they already got it. So click, you just accidentally bought it. And so the trick is to get your boss's credit card and put it in your laptop. So then that way you can at least go, well, ooh, I didn't mean to do it. We want to negotiate for those things, and customer wants it free. We want it for exorbitant price. The delivery, we want it when we get around to it, and the quality, we want it as good as it was. If it's not perfect, we go, hey, it's a cabinet. It's an organic piece of wood. It's part of a tree. No trees are perfect, right? Right? I'm thinking that the cabinet guys have said that before, somewhere along the line, because they're not. They've got knots in the wood that
we call it characteristics of the wood.
It's a character. It's the patina. Those aren't saw marks. That's character. It's not a 2-year-old scratch. It's distressed furniture. Geniuses in marketing. But this is what we ultimately want. The negotiation is about what's fair. What's a fair price? What's a fair delivery schedule? What's a fair quality level? And the quality level affects the price. The delivery time affects the price. The faster you want it, the more expensive it is, because now we've got to ship to FedEx. We've got to buy all the materials FedEx or buy them from a competitor because they're already here in town. And so it's negotiating over what's fair that we have to do. Now, you've got 2 handouts that have the negotiating matrix on the front of it. It's the same matrix. You can look at either one, I have talked about this in class before. This is the matrix that you have. I've talked about that before, there are 5 legitimate negotiating strategies, and knowing what strategy we want requires us to answer 2 questions. The question on the left-hand column is, how important is the relationship to us from 1 to 10, and how important is the outcome to us on the bottom scale from a 1 to 10. So, how important is the relationship? How important is the outcome? That will tell us what square, what quadrant, or what area we wind up in on that matrix. And I'm saying this, reminding you of this. We've talked about it in this class before, so that's not a news flash. But what's important to know is what matrix where in the matrix do I want to be? Do I want to be accommodating because the relationship matters a lot, and it matters more than the outcome in fact, so I accommodate. And do I want to withdraw or shut down because the relationship doesn't matter and the outcome doesn't matter, so I don't care what you're selling, I'm not interested. I don't need a warranty on my 15-year-old car that's got 130,000 miles on it already. Stop calling me. You don't want to warranty that car. If you've never seen me drive it, you for sure don't want to warranty that car. So stop calling. I withdraw right from that negotiation. If the relationship doesn't matter, but the outcome does, go for the throat. Bottom right corner in the matrix. Go for the kill. Win at any cost. Win at any cost, gauged only by your personal ethics and character. If you believe in lying, cheating, and stealing, that's the time to do it. Relationship doesn't matter, the outcome's important, go for it. I'm not telling you to break the law, but if you don't think that's wrong, go for it. That's what, guided by your particular ethics, your particular moral compass. That's the only rule in the bottom right corner. Now, if it matters to the relationship long term, and the outcome matters too, then we're up in the top right corner, we're looking for a win-win. I am reminding you of this fact. We've talked about it, you know about that. Why I'm reminding you is that if I'm going for the win-win because I'm up here in collaborative mode, I think the relationship matters a lot, the outcome matters a lot, so we're going to collaborate, you and I, and we're going to come up with a collaborative agreement, a win-win solution in this negotiation. But My opponent is in the bottom right corner. He's going for my throat. He's trying to win at all costs. So my job is to not negotiate right now. My job is to try to see if I can move him out of the bottom right corner up to where I am, or have him be prepared for me to move to the bottom right corner and duke him out. But I want to be in the same corner he's at, or she, when I'm negotiating. So my first tack is to identify on the map, where is our company in this negotiation? And then get agreement with where they are at in the negotiation. I might have to talk them through that point. I might have to ask them some pointed questions. Do I matter as a customer to you? And when they don't answer it, because they'll give you some BS. But then you ask it again, do I matter as a customer to you? And if I can get them to say, yes, you do matter, all of a sudden I eliminated 2 of the boxes, right? I got everything into the top right corner, half of the page anyway. Now, how bad's the outcome matter? We've established that our relationship matters. Now, if I can get them to move that the outcome matters for him and for me, then it moves us over here. Now I have a level playing field. They're not coming from a different corner than I'm coming from. If they're trying to withdraw and I'm trying to close a deal, how successful are we going to be? They're going to withdraw. They ain't going to call me back. They're going to blow off the meeting. They're going to disappear. They're going to go, yeah, I'll get back to you. They're not. You know, and so we've heard those kinds of things. They're in a different corner than I am. So I've got to get them into my corner, whichever one it is, based on what I think is important about what we're negotiating. Does that make sense? It's a hugely important thing, because you're not going to win. I mean, the only time you're going to win is if you're in the bottom right corner, then it doesn't matter what corner they're in. You have the ability to go for the throat, and you have a chance of winning there. But you're only going to win once. You're not going to win twice. You're not going to have a long-term ongoing relationship. You're only going to have one. And this is what happens at the LA car dealers. There's so many people and so many car dealers and so many transactions that they know when you're buying a car this time, you're not going to be back for another one. And they close accordingly. They're in the bottom right corner, going for the throat. And they want you to think that they care about you. I mean, they'll tell you that they're another corner. But the reality of it is they know it's a bonus if you ever come back and buy another vehicle. There's enough customers in LA that they can do with a one-time transaction from everyone and have a surviving dealership. I mean, that's pretty incredible to say that out loud. Our businesses here in St. George are smaller, and our customer base is smaller. And we know that there's not enough customers for a pizza joint to survive with one-time transaction. Ask the guys at Blaze. Not going to happen. I've talked to a bunch of people about that, because we talked in this class before some of you were in this class about Blaze specifically, and that piqued my interest. And I've talked to a lot of people that, yeah, I ordered from the once and it was burnt. Yeah, I ordered from once, it was too crispy, it was too hot, it was too this, it was too that. They never ordered again. These are people that tried them. It's better more than I never even tried it, so I can't comment. They never got enough on my radar enough for me to do that. What's wrong? That's a negotiation with a public market that's not been successful in this for some reason. While they are successful in Vegas, we've done about that. I don't know. But you can't afford to burn a customer when you're in our market, right? So bottom right corner of negotiation is most likely a bad place to be negotiating from. So know where your opponent is at in the matrix is critical for us. We defined conflict, we talked about that. Win-win solution, we talked about that. Some ground rules to negotiations. I'm going to put these up here, and these come from getting to yes. And they are some things that Herb will solidify when we watch the video at the end of class. What do you think it means by no neediness?
Wanting it too much.
Exactly. You've seen the salesman that's approached us and they want the sale too bad. And you feel bad, but you don't know why they want it so bad. What's going on? You know, and you know, some of them fake that, play it, because like, oh man, my kids are starving. I need to sell it. Oh, man, what a turd I am because I don't like the stuff, you know. But no, when we don't need a deal to happen, we are much stronger in negotiation. We have a much higher likelihood of winning when we don't reflect our neediness. We've got to act, at least on the surface. We can be, our stomach can be churning. But be careful that doesn't come across. We can't be needy. We have to act as if we value the relationship so much this deal doesn't have to happen. I'd rather it not happen than have a bad outcome. I don't want to wind up at suing you guys. I'd rather just back off on this. And as soon as we take that approach, sometimes that's what's necessary to get the deal done. You know, sometimes that will be, okay, yeah. And there's something else about this that's in our brain about neediness. Suppose you're hiring a realtor. Let's just talk about that for a second. You're hiring a realtor, you're going to put your house on the market, you haven't decided which agent you're going to use, you're going to talk to 3. And you invite them over to check out your house because you want to see where they're going to assess the current market value of your house and what point they'd sell it at, how they go about selling it, what they think it's going to be worth. You're going to get 3 opinions. That's just good business, right? So the first one drives up in a used car that they got in the $500 lot, the back of the lot at one of the car lots in town. It's held together with duct tape and it's missing a bumper. The wipers don't work, which is okay in St. Jordan probably. The windows are rolled down though, which says probably the air conditioner doesn't work either. That's a problem. What do you think of that realtor? Hold your thought for a second. What do you think of that realtor? Then the next realtor drives up and they've got a brand new car. It's the newest Lexus model. It's not too ostentatious for St. George. It's a 4-door. It's not a sports car. It's not a race car. But it's shiny and it's brand new and it shows a amount of class to it. What we don't know is anything about that. We know those 2 observations. Let's not talk about the 3rd realtor yet at this point. Maybe we won't get to that. From those 2 observations, the fact could be that car's the kid's car. Our car's in the shop. And that's the kid's college beater, and they didn't want to be late, so they drove that to your house. The Lexus, it's brand new and shiny, could be on a lease that they're 3 months behind on their lease, and the repossessor hasn't found which garage they park it in at night yet to repossess that vehicle. We don't know, but we are likely to make a decision on neediness. And you go, I've got a nice, kind heart. I'm going to list my house with the poor realtor that just started that's broke. I'm guessing. We might say that out loud. We might say that at church. But in reality, we're going to list our house with the realtor that we believe is successful. And I've had these conversations with general contractors in St. George, guys that are building houses here. Should you drive a $100,000, they're more than that, $110,000 Raptor, Ford Raptor, all decked out with, lift kit on it and a cool truck? Should you drive that? And I've had contractors ask me the question, should I drive that? I can afford it. I want my customers to believe that I'm successful, and that reflects that I'm successful. I'm the builder to choose to build their house. And that's a two-edged sword. What are the 2 ways it could go? Yes, I could think they're successful because they got a nice shiny new truck that's cost more than my first few houses cost. I could draw that conclusion. What's the other conclusion I could draw? This guy's ripping me off, man. I'm going to have to pay for his next truck. I don't want to do that. So there is this no neediness needs to have some discretion about it, right? You must project yourself that this transaction is not the last life or death transaction for you. As soon as we do, we're at a point of losing our negotiation. We may get the deal, but we'll lose the margin. They'll beat us down on price. We desperately get the deal, but it's now not worth anything to us if we do the math. But we got the deal. Well, yeah, that wasn't really good business if we ended up doing that. So that's something for us to understand back and forth, think about, have a conversation with the rest of our team. How are we going to project how bad we need this deal? Of whether we need this deal or not, how bad we're going to do it. We don't make any assumptions about the other party of what they do need or don't need. We always are full of assumptions. We don't want to make it. I don't want freestyle. When I put freestyle up there, what I mean by freestyle, I don't want us to go into the negotiation and wing it. If we're a team in our company and we're setting up to go do a negotiation, we are going to choreograph that conversation, that meeting in the conference room. We are going to have a meeting before the meeting, and we're going to choreograph it. And the people in the room are going to have roles. And we're going to have a good cop, bad cop. We're going to have the hardline person beyond the bad cop. We are going to have a spy whose job is to say nothing but to watch the reactions of the other people in the room and report that back to us and take notes of those things. They're not involved in the meat of the conversation at all. They're observing what whispers are going on between the two parties and the other people, the other team, the other side. We're looking at body reactions, facial expressions. It's a poker game, right? And we got a guy reading the poker faces. So that if we're doing the lead, we don't have to think about that. We got somebody on our team covering that. And so we don't go in this thing and make it up as we go. If you do that, you can win some. But you're not putting your best game forward. You don't just go out and play, shirts and skins in the NBA playoff. Where you've got plays for a half second on the clock inbound and you're behind by a point. We got a plan for that. The odds are against us, but we got a plan for that, right? So we're not freestyling that. I'll just flip it in and see if Jordan can dunk it. That's not a plan. That's not a good way to go into negotiation. The no talking rule is obviously that somebody's got to do the talking. But we want to choreograph who's doing the talking and what that talking is. When you talk, you give away information. Information is one of the most valuable things in a negotiation, especially a business negotiation that matters. The more talking you do, the more they learn about you. The more they learn about you, the weaker you are, the stronger they are. So if anybody's doing talking, I want them to do the talking because I want to learn about them. And before we go in, we know at what point we are not doing the deal. So we know where our walkaway point is at. If we cannot get this, this, and this, we'll shake their hand, thank them for their time, and politely hope that we have a better circumstance next time we cross paths. Because this time we're going to walk away. And we're not mad, we're just walking away. We didn't get what we needed in order for us to do this. So while we wanted it really bad, we didn't reflect that, and we actually walked away. Now, sometimes that's when the negotiation really starts, is when you do walk away. And you get that call before you get to your car that says, hey, we've all had that happen to us. I remember walking out of a jewelry store one time and saying no to an engagement ring that I was buying. I've been around enough, I bought one of them. Sorry. Just the way it is. And before I got out of before I got out of the parking lot, before I got to the parking lot in my car, I had a call, and they dropped the price $10,000. $10,000, and I realized these guys are hosing me. I don't want their ring anyway. That's, if you can drop the price that much, I'm in the wrong place, I think. But walking away often triggers a response, right? When you walk away, the salesman comes running after you. Don't leave, don't leave. I want to sell you a couch. What's wrong? We got it in green. What if you take the floor model? The Boulevard will never let you take the floor model. Well, maybe they should sometimes, right? And talk about that stuff. So I want to keep going because we got some more things before. Some things that we need to have on our agenda before we go into the negotiation. We need to know what the problems are. we need to know what our baggage is, because the other team might, or maybe they really do. I'm in the medical arena a lot of my career, and we were negotiating with a company in Salt Lake recently in the COVID crisis moments, and what we were trying to develop a contract for supply, and what I knew about them, this was their baggage, I knew that they'd had an FDA recall that had happened on the chemical we were trying to buy from them. And I knew that they had FDA trouble, and they didn't know that I knew. So they should have had a strategy about their baggage. Their baggage was they had legal problems with the FDA. It wasn't insurmountable, but when it caught them by surprise that we knew about them, it gave us great advantage. So if they'd have put that baggage on the table in some way so that they could have spun it their way, they wouldn't have had to react and catch it by surprise. So our baggage, we need to know what our baggage is and what their baggage is, and we need to have a conversation about baggage. And I use that word only because I think that, you know, if you've dated anybody, you understand what baggage is. You know, and so that relates to negotiations of all kinds as well. What is the baggage? We all got baggage. Our company has baggage. Our product line has baggage. Our customer base has baggage. We will keep the baggage secret if we can. But we will talk about whether we ought to put our baggage on the table, because that may strengthen our position and weaken their arguments against us. Because now they can't use it as, you know, if I say the trunk doesn't close on that used car, that's baggage. I put that on the table when you come in and talk to me, and I say, eBay has that part for $30. We've got it on order. The trunk doesn't close properly. That keeps you from saying, I want $1,000 off on that car because the trunk doesn't even work. You know, you're going, yeah, we know, we put the baggage on the table. So sometimes we want to talk about what our baggage is and whether we want to put it on the table or not. And we want to be ready if they put it on the table. So it's not a surprise. And we want to know as much about their baggage as we possibly can, in the hopes that they won't be ready to talk about their baggage. They'll be surprised that we knew. And when they find out that we knew, or we know, that weakens their negotiating capability. We have to put in our team, we have to know what we want. Now, there's two things that we're going to talk about, and we'll see before we wrap up on this topic. There are positions and there are interests. And positions and interests are not the same thing when we negotiate. For example, we have people with positions that we are running out of water in Washington County. I don't know if we are or not. I've heard both sides of that one. And I don't have all the data. That is not a position, I mean, that's hard to negotiate that. That is not the interest is, we need enough water to do what we need to do for now and for my kids. That's an interest, that's not a position. And a position takes a harder line on an issue, and interest takes a broader look at an outcome. And if we can convert negotiations to interests, we are going to be more successful almost all the time. And what we want has to be related to an interest, what our interest is. And when we're looking for common ground to negotiate through differences of opinion, a lot of times those interests, the positions are hard to overcome. We have to battle. We have to shoot at the hill to take the hill. When in fact that's not what we need to do. In many cases we need to shift the interest, because a lot of times we have common interests, and we just have two different ways. Affordable housing is an example in St. George. Affordable housing. The position is, I don't want poor people in my neighborhood. That's a position. And I've heard this in city council meetings, I've heard this in organizations that are trying to address the issue of affordable housing in St. George, because we've got a problem. We've got businesses that can't hire people to work there because they don't make enough money to earn a living. School teachers and cops being among them. You can't buy a Salisbury home without household income of being a lot more than most of our jobs are paying right now. So we need places for us to live while we work here, right? And make the place a better community. So we don't have those. And so the position that people have is I'm all in favor of affordable housing, but I don't want it in my neighborhood. I don't want it to wreck my neighborhood. I want my neighborhood to stay. And people sometimes will just say that out loud. But most often they don't say it out loud. You have to ask a few questions to understand what it is. That is a position. The position is, I don't want affordable housing in my neighborhood. That is not really the interest. The interest is, I don't want crime in my neighborhood. I want my neighborhood to be safe. And they're making an assumption that the level of the expense of the home is directly related to the amount of crime. And we can show some examples where in ghettos that's true. But we can also show examples where it's not. And so the interest would be, how could we build a community where it's really safe for everybody, even if a house is a cheap house? Couldn't that happen? Couldn't we somehow have people living in those houses that had the same values as we do? Hello, we're all human. We have similar values here. Everybody doesn't, but the ones that don't, it's not all related to them just being poor. I know some very rich people that have very bad value systems. And so what we're looking at is the interest of, we don't want crime in our neighborhood. Okay, let's address crime. How do we make a mixed neighborhood with apartments and townhouses and duplexes and rich houses? How do we make that mixture of a neighborhood safe? Can it be done? Of course it can be done. It's interesting they've done some other places. Look at Chinatown in San Francisco. One of the lowest crime neighborhoods in San Francisco. How do they do that? It's one of the poorest neighborhoods in San Francisco. It's also got a lot of rich Chinese guys in it too. And they made an agreement with the San Francisco Police Force a long time ago. We don't want trouble. Our living is based on tourism, and we don't want trouble. If you've got trouble, let us know. We will fix it. We don't know how they fix it, but they fix it, right? They police it themselves, the elders of the community. Don't let crap happen at the level you would expect it in a neighborhood of that population density and that income level. That's an example of, you can do it, you can make a neighborhood safe. So the interest is safety, not income. So sounds like we ought to be able to solve this, but we haven't been able to solve it yet. But you get the point of what I'm talking about, an interest. If we can shift something to an interest. The next thing we want to know is what happens next. So as we negotiate, we want that clearly set out, what the next step actions are going to be as we go through the negotiation. I'll talk about pain another time. On our negotiating team, if we have a company negotiation going on, I need a leader that's going to lead the negotiation. I already told you I need a good guy, a bad guy. I need the hardliner guy that no matter what, he's our second tier. If we can get, because what they will do when they notice there's a good guy, bad guy, they will soften this guy up. I need a backup hardliner that can hold our position. And so I have that person scripted. They don't usually take that. They're not usually vocal with that until it's going really badly. And then at that point, they need to see that they're up against somebody that's not going to bend, not going to yield. And that if they want the deal to happen, they've pushed us. They've got no, and we're not going to get pushed anymore. They've found our bottom agreement. And then finally, we have a sweeper. That's the guy that I told you that doesn't do any talking at all. They're sweeping the room for what's going on. You know, who got a phone call? Who got a text? Are they texting each other? I think they're texting each other. What are they saying that I text each other? Why are they texting each other? They responded to this. Why did they respond to that? So the sweeper is watching for all that stuff that's going on, little notes that are scribbled and passed over to somebody. Not necessarily being able to read upside down what was written, but the simple fact that my comment got a response from them, and they scribbled a note. You know, so what did that mean to us? And can we read what's going on while the negotiation is unfolding? And I've had the sweeper. We did a lot of business in Asia, and I've had the sweeper most of the time in the room. And I learned the hard way one time we did it wrong, being an American-looking person that speaks their language. And so we negotiating with Koreans in the U.S. Conference room somewhere. The sweeper was a physicist that I used quite a bit. He was hired by the U.S. military to listen to Korean radio transmissions while he was in service. So he spoke Korean very well. Didn't look like it. He was a farm kid from University of Illinois, and at his physics degree, and so nobody suspected that he was listening because the Koreans were talking back and forth because they figured none of us understood what they were saying. And that was false. The time it went badly is when we took him to the airport and he said goodbye to me in Korean. That was a big problem. Shouldn't do that. Can't let your cards, can't reveal cards. Is that unethical to do? That's the moral compass I'm talking about. Some of you would say that's across the edge. I don't want to have somebody listening to what they're saying to each other openly. It's like you're talking at the grocery store and they just assume that you don't speak their language. And I don't. And so they were correct in that. But is it right for you to have a plant in the room that does speak their language? That's your call, whether that's legitimate or not. I think it's okay, and I've used that with the sweeper, because if they're willing to talk openly and assume that I don't understand their language, that's a bad assumption. And they should, especially now with Google Translate in your pocket. You can have earphones that is pretty much translating live. Inaccurately, be careful about what you're listening to, but you can pretty much have fair real-time translations going on. So, my time here, I want us to do something before we go to break, so let me just see what I need to cover here. We've talked about that. We've got a handout on that. We need to talk about that. Top secret worksheet. We do need to look at that. This is page 2 of this handout. Page 2 looks like that. On this worksheet, this is something you can use, something like it, where we define, remember, positions and interests. I want to get everything into an interest. What are our interests? What are their interests? I want to have that discussion before we have our meeting. I want to have options in our pocket, things that we've thought through. We could build that without a balcony on it. We could build it in stages. We could cut some of the corners out, because corners cost more than straight walls. You know, we've got different options that we've thought through that can get them to the point potentially of still closing the deal. If there are standards that we can draw from, they go, well, I don't want that to be, concrete. You say, well, you know what? It's a concrete footer. That's the wall. That's a building code. And so the standards we draw from are building code. We're wiring a machine in building B right now, and the amperage calls for a number 3 wire. Well, you can't really buy number 3 wire very easily. You get 6, and a 3 gauge wire, you get 4 gauge, but 4 gauge won't hold the amperage that this machine needs to take. It really needs to be a 3 gauge wire. So the electrician's saying, well, you've got to buy double aught. Now, double aught is, I don't know, $100 a foot. I don't know what it costs.
By the way, I can get 3 wire.
Yeah. And so you go by the electrical standard and say, you can't negotiate. This is an amperage draw thing and a wire size thing. And yes, that wire is more expensive, but that's what you have to buy to do that. And so you pull that out of the negotiation. I mean, you don't really, but you say, it's not our idea to supply that, it's a rule to supply that. So all of a sudden now you can't really say something unless you want to scab it yourself and go, well, build it without wiring it and we'll go wire it ourselves. And if they do that, they'll burn the building down, right? So you don't want to do that. Now, the next slot is something that if you've studied negotiation, you know exactly what that means. It's called a BATNA. What is a BATNA? It's an acronym. It stands for your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Your best alternative to a negotiated agreement. If this deal falls through, what are we going to do? This contract is going to pay labor for the next month for the company. Our cash flow is tight. We don't have money coming in. We better figure out the best alternative to, if this deal goes south, how are we going to stay in business? If I don't get this commission, I can't buy the car. What's your best alternative to not being able to do that? Am I in trouble?
No, I heard somebody yelling. I was like, yeah. How's you guys not going?
He was yelling at us. Don't let him lie.
Wow, his office is a long way from here. I hope he was nearby when I was yelling. So what are we going to do if we don't make a deal? We need to know what the point is. I talk to people all the time that are sweating bullets because they got to have this thing. They're trying not to be needy about it. So what we want to do is stop the transaction and the negotiation for a while. Let's talk about what is your best alternative to negotiate an agreement. What if this does fall through? What if it doesn't happen? What are we going to do? What's plan B? And if we're out of money, what are we going to do? Okay, you're out of money. I got that. What are we going to do? And as soon as you come up with, well, we could do this or this, sure not what I want to do, but we could do it. As soon as you figure out that you can survive, now you can negotiate without that level of neediness. You want the deal to happen, but you have figured out what your best alternative to a negotiated deal is. If this thing goes south with this customer, that frees us up to do business with another customer. We can go after them heavily. Right now, we don't have the time to go after them and try to even bid their work. So if this thing falls through, that's what we're going to do. We got a plan. And it's not a given, but it's a plan. So it's an alternative to what we're going to do. Maybe we'll change what we offer them if the deal goes through. The best alternative is instead of building you a house, we'll buy you a tiny house. You know, you put it on your land. So that's the best alternative for you. You don't make as much money, but it's something you're going to do. So the best alternative, and if we can figure out what is their best alternative, how bad do they need to do the deal with you? You know, if that doesn't go their way, what are they going to do? And sometimes you go, well, you know what? My best alternative to buying from this vendor is I got another vendor I can buy from. They're not a sole supplier. So my best alternative is fine. Negotiate with me, or I'm going to go to another supplier. And so the alternative is strong. I've got an alternative. It's not a downside for us at all. Talk about that, so that our team knows that we've got a good alternative if things don't work out on this negotiation. So the last 3 lines on that page are, what is it that we really want for it to be a fabulous deal? That's what we aspire to. This is what we want. This is the whole 9 yards of what we want. Then we have a content with, and then we have a live with. So it's getting worse as it goes, right? What are the 3 alternatives there? At what point and that last one, that's getting close to our walkaway point. At what point do we walk away? So, I want to make, car dealers takes a car in on trade, and what they want to do, I want to make $10,000 on this car, and that's pie in the sky. If the right person walks in, they want exactly this configuration. It's a weird color, but that's what would be wonderful to do. I'd be content with if we made $8,000 on it. We'll walk away if we only make 2, or whatever it is that the dealer says. So the sales manager's got a walk-away point figured out on every vehicle on their flooring, and they often changes daily depending on their flooring plan. It's a 120-day flooring plan. Their walk-away point changes every day because they know what the auction's going to give them, pretty much. They know what Manheim's selling across the United States. So when they send that car to auction, they kind of know what they're going to get for it. So they have to get that much or more, or they won't do the deal, right? They'll walk away. So they know better than we know because they're not emotionally attached to it usually. They don't care if they keep the car another 2 days or not. We want it, so that we're less likely to walk away from it than they are. And so if they think that their best alternative to walking away from it is to get another customer, walks in and buys it from them. So as they go through this worksheet, that's kind of what they get. Questions or comments? It's getting close to break time, but before we go on break, I want us to do an exercise, start the exercise anyway. I have a couple of things that I would like us to do before we watch Herb's video. Conflict negotiation. And I want you to pass this out, and while you're passing it out, I want to read it, and I want you to pick up partners, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 of us in the room. So groups of 2 or 3 are going to negotiate the 2 sides of this problem. I've got 3 of these scenarios. We're not going to have time today to do 3. We're going to do 1. So as the page is coming around to you, this is a resource conflict. The background, we got 2 countries. Camellia and Goatland are bordering countries. These 2 countries are surrounded by desert except for a small area around Lake Fish. Lake fish is very fertile and allows the nations to grow things to eat and sell. On the north shore of the lake are other countries with large cities, and lake fish allows people to travel to these cities to trade. Camellia has sovereignty over the shoreline of lake fish, but the camel citizens have always allocated the goat citizens access to the lake. The camels have been cooperative about sharing the shores with the goats. The two countries are drawn at the bottom of the page. The issue: as more people north and south are using lake fish and finding new purposes for the water, the lake is slowly drying up. The camels and goats have begun to argue about who should have access to the water. Some camels claim that, traditionally, the entire south shore was theirs, and the goats have infiltrated their land. The goats are accusing the camels of being wasteful with the water and blame the camels for the lake drying up. What's happening now? Recently, the camels have become more active traders, selling what they grow in the cities in the north. To protect their trade, the camels have banned the goats from using camel ports and imposed stiff penalties for any goat caught fishing in camel waters. The camels say lake fish has traditionally belonged to them. The camels have also imposed a tax on the goats for the use of any of the water from lake fish, claiming the goats should pay if they want to use a camel resource. The goats protested the tax and accused the camels of controlling the trade in fruits and vegetables. Without access to lake fish, goat land will be confined to the desert and isolated from its major trading partners. Already, goat agriculture experts are predicting a famine as water for crop irrigation becomes scarce. The goats say they must resist this injustice. Goats have begun to disrupt camel trade, sabotaging their vegetable and fruit farms and even pirating their ships as they sail to trade in the cities. The goat and camel dispute escalates into violence. Lake fish is drying up fast. What is the solution? I want you and your partner, one of you to take the position of the camel and one to take the position of the goat. You are opposing countries, and I want you to talk about that. We're looking at conflict resolution here. We're talking about a possible solution. What do you see? Everybody's got the same piece of paper. There's no surprise on that. So split up in groups. Talk about it for a few minutes. Get your brain triggered to thinking about the problem, thinking about how you might resolve that in a negotiation. These are skills we really want to teach in our company, by the way. And so start that process in about 5 minutes. Feel free to slip out for a break. Come back and talk a little bit, and then we'll collectively talk. And I have another conflict I want you to look at after you've done that. So start the conversation, decide who your teams are, and which one of you is a camel and which one's a goat. And you can be teams of 2 or 3, 2 goats, 1 camel, 2 camels, 1 goat, however you want to do that. So split up, start the conversation, and then we'll talk.
I'm lower than
Yeah.
We'll go up north.
Right?
Florida is the real stuff, that's all I'm saying.
So it sounds like never really brought once how it goes. Like it leans towards
I actually hard to, I can't move it.
no, I can't go. There's not really a sentence in here saying that the goats are leaning towards how the camels are being allowed, right? I guess me, right?
So the major, so we're looking at first, the need is the lake.
Yes.
The water fishing. The need would be the goats. Need is the lake or water. And then the interest is access.
Yeah. I mean, if you go then it's access. The interest for camellia and the camels are.
Yeah, we're gonna dry up, we're gonna have famine, but they're gonna.
I mean,
I don't see anybody like.
keeping the trade,
This is all that
like keeping
exists.
trade up, I guess maybe for the interest for both.
We're on an island.
I've read about
It's a
some
lake.
stuff.
Yeah.
right? An interest for Camellia
We got the
would be
east to the north, you know.
Yeah.
keeping active.
You can see that they own, their land touches the offshore, right?
Yeah.
So go on, so no shore. So they need to use access to the water. So it's go through.
I was,
Yeah.
these camels and these goats can operate all of this.
So,
Not very big. That's all I'm saying.
If we get rid of the,
The goat of my son.
if we get rid of the license, then we could get all the water.
Then both have, you know, you can take North Shore.
But they take all this area up here.
Then paying for access.
Yeah.
So you want access, you have to pay for it.
Paying for access.
So the cash
That's
and
our
you
plan.
True.
pay if they want to use.
I don't know where it's like.
I don't think we take that.
I'm gonna put keeping active trade for interest too, because it, I mean, that,
Okay.
the underlying thing on here is that it become more active traders on the, the cities to the north.
We can
Well, it sounds like more, the county really, their interest is more about shore.
Yep.
Not about, hey, we're at water, go is more like, hey,
If they wanna.
we don't care about anything else, if we don't have this water, our land is
Yeah,
down,
we're
or
done.
in front of the desert, and we have no water.
So what's,
Then
what's
we're
the
also
ones that they're,
helping the ecology of the area.
anyways,
By making sure if you agree to not have that interest.
I would say,
So what are the options?
And then, so.
The options are
As an
we try, we gotta be collaborative, right?
maybe a certain amount. You know, you don't tax them to, take all the water, but you have a certain amount of restrictions.
I think
They're all
that's,
gonna be restricted.
I think that's the main thing, I think it's gotta be restrictions. Restrictions on both.
You have this amount of free water, after that, you have, you use it more than what you're allowed, then you
Oh,
pay
fuck,
for it.
well, we need to
Or
go
you tax
ahead
it.
on this one.
Yeah, I think there's so many different ways we could do it where Camellia could cut off a piece of their land, right? And give it to Oakland and then have Camellia, charge them for that piece of land, right? You know, saying, hey, I'll give you this piece of land with access to the lake, then you have to pay me.
They could actually establish a trust,
Yeah.
you know, where both people pay into the trust that goes to the lake.
Yeah.
You don't have, you know, nobody owns it. It's both people are funding, paying both people, or just one person that runs the goat land. So goat land isn't paying the camels, and then they can use that money for whatever they want, or to use that their trade, or anything.
Oh, all right. Then my
So we say it's the way it is.
Yeah, I know.
To deal with the lake.
Like a third party?
Yeah. Yeah, and the money that we're paying, both people pay.
Yeah.
They only both contribute to a certain amount. Use whatever, if you give a certain amount, you pay this money goes to, bring more water to the lakes and now, or.
To have that third party be, whatever the third party is, right, bring in that third party, and make sure that that third party has two interests. One, make sure that the lake, like, have scientists who come in, make sure that the lake can still be,
Well, the first part
The
of the
restaurant, it's just goat and camel,
and
right?
then also,
the first part is go north,
finding
you
that little
establish
ground
a
where it can still
cohesive
be,
army, and then go north.
where the
and go
economy
north.
is there.
Killing
Because obviously,
everybody
you
else,
need to
all the
get
borders
to
around
how,
it.
you know,
We decided to join.
The lake's gonna drive in
trading
in
and
this
selling.
scenario. The
It's
lake's
like
gonna
more
have
that lake,
anyway.
go land,
Even if we
and
come to
making
some
sure
sort of
that
agreement, we're both
even ground
the
between
northerners take up all the water.
making sure the
Like
lake
Lake
is
Nita,
still
right?
environmentally
Surprising.
and
I saw some
there
pictures.
can
They're
still
finding
be
dead
trade.
people.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, they
pretty
showed
bizarre.
4 dead people in there except for
Yeah,
water.
yeah, 'cause that's their livelihood.
It's
Their
from
livelihood is
the-
trade in these other cities that are on the water.
Yeah, I saw those pictures.
I think that third party, like I said, I think that third party would make sense.
Lake Mead?
Oh,
Lake
Making
Mead?
sure that there's a third party involved, like buying
It's
a
this
third party to
situation
make,
of
to
water.
call Lake Fish a national lake out there, you know,
Yeah.
whatever it is,
Sometimes
they
it's
can
just
do
like,
exercise
like,
there.
you can go,
Yeah.
I didn't move. Like,
But
I didn't break.
So it's time for break. You're welcome to take a break. I have 2 more case studies. Case 2 and case 3. They look like the same, but they're different. That are laying right here. I'd like you to take one of each of those. And if you've solved the goat camel problem, take one of those, take both of them and look at them. You can do that when you come back from break. And then we are going to talk a little bit about this, and we're going to watch the video from Herb Cohen. So we'll see you back on the field.
Me too.
It's okay.
We need a lock to
I
wheels.
barely tapped it.
Either that or we need a mending plate it to the other one so it doesn't fall, so we'll just go off.
It's okay.
So,
They're making money, trade more. Go land has no water, no agriculture, dirty, it's drying up, they lost access to the lake. I mean, like, there's still like small, poaching, camels. I say like the old school, that everyone is,
Like, I'm just
you know, no golf courses.
confined to the desert, this one
a great song. It's kind of called a cut, but that's all one another.
Assuming this is like, is it a developed country?
It seems like that.
Go in.
Or either of them. I think that camel.
Some camels.
It's just like,
Camel people, like, on their end, and be like, no, we're good. We don't want to. Like, that is an option. The only thing we have to offer is
issues.
independence.
We didn't see you wash it, so this whole
Camels want to prolong the war.
Yeah.
While their soldiers better eat troops better eat. Go to land, soldiers are hungry. So do you aspire to get the same? Do you aspire to take the Christian?
Aspire to cigarette after that comment.
We inspire to get people
You
out
get the two other.
Oh, boy, that's a claim.
Right above the where you cross the
like parties.
Merge the countries, we call it.
Go out and eat your fences. Good.
I didn't do the wrong way though. That's not the way it was
So
said.
the ruler of Million,
So it was like, I was supposed to be there, but I wasn't.
their son and daughter together. They
I like that ending.
Cross out that paragraph.
Yeah. I would have rather rewrite that as true. Yep, that's okay. Merge the countries.
Ooh.
Everyone who can be.
He's talking to Jonathan. He's going to have a beer with you. He's like, isn't that gay? We're both non-adult men who, if you're even like me, not even friends.
Whatever you do, decision, I'm saying war.
You never used to make friends? What?
saying,
We'll go have
okay, so
birthday,
what if we married our youngest daughter to your
Wow, wow.
youngest son and we merged the countries together?
Yeah, I think that would be my live with down there. I was thinking more like fishing licenses, maybe toll bridges for ports, you know, to get through.
Can't build a bridge, we don't have any fruit.
Oh, we have the fruit. You're just sabotaging it, but we figured we grow closer to the lake. We can probably protect the border a little more.
We're starving though, so we can't build a bridge.
This is true.
You
We
have to
can
build
start it
ports.
out.
That is rule number one rule for it.
Okay, we not only raid the ship, we don't give it back.
But I think our biggest problem here is honestly, there's a country above the north that's also using the water that we don't have any way of.
We team up and we conquer them.
No, yeah, we joined the
Oh, we're German.
But you have to cross through us first, yeah.
Figure out who Chameleon comes to also and
Some of them are
on the line.
It does say,
Supposed to be down, right?
yeah, so the issue is more people north and south are using the fish lake to find purposes for the water. This lake is drying up. So really the purpose of our issue is the lake's drying up.
So how about the city in the north and south? We agree that they're the problem. We cut both of them off from like fish.
Right in the south.
Yeah, what shows me now, like, I don't want to do, yeah, I was thinking maybe like sign a tree or something, or sign a,
Or
some sort of,
What if we
like
just
a
make it
trading
to get rid of
treaty,
water
some sort
like
of,
both countries, like
that
each
shows that,
share.
like, out,
something that at least
out
they're
of
actually
free
buying
gas,
fruits
out of
and
no
vegetables that we're growing down.
source of resource, right?
No, they don't. Fall apart. They can't.
Let's talk for a minute about what you've got so far. And there's two more scenarios that I want you to take with you and read them and come up with a couple of thoughts for next class on what your ideas might be on how to resolve these two other things. What are some thoughts that you came up so far between the goats and the camels?
The northerners are the true problem and we need to band together.
So the customer base is really one of the economic engines, one of the does that sound like China and Malaysia? The U.S.? Maybe. Well, what's another? But that's a point. Certainly, the northern countries are a factor. What are some of the other thoughts? Callie, what do you guys?
I think the camels should get voted.
Just got to wipe them out. Huh?
Get rid of those guys.
This is a Ukraine problem, right?
We were saying, getting a third party, and that is over the lake, that has like kind of two separate departments in a sense. One department that's like more scientific, that makes sure that the lake is stable enough to still be sustainable, and then also to have another department that's focused on, because obviously the camels, right, a big, probably, we kind of took a guess at the majority of the economical use of the lake is very important to them,
Yep.
right? So also having, and obviously of course we're goat land too, but having a balance between those two departments and making sure that the lake is just fully, that third party is fully over that lake, like nobody else, no other of the two countries have any control of it.
Joel's toll booth. You're gonna.
Well, that's what I was going to say. We came up with the tariff idea.
Okay.
When the goats travel through Cameltown, then we pay tariffs and make it economically like a good thing for the goats.
So there's some sort of balance of trade or compensation for. So you brought up an issue of resource preservation. And right now we have two opposing governments that we don't know a lot about them. We don't know what really the source. You know, do the camels not fish? We know they farm, and the goats are doing both. But do they farm as much? We don't know. They're increasing their exports. We did see that.
It's a little different. I was going to, even though they're fighting vying for different things, the interests are almost the same. Keep the lake with water.
It looks that way. And so resource utilization and preservation, sustainability is something, that kind of sounds like current problems that we have here.
That's why we joined an army together to kill the
So
people around.
you decided to
So
go,
that we can, yeah.
Lake Powell's
Yeah, we will-
let's go all Second Amendment here.
We're both gonna protection around the lake for ourselves.
So there's more to be known. What did you guys come up with, Josie? I heard a couple of your conversations. These guys were going to eat camels. I heard that. You know?
We're either gonna go on like a full-out war,
Okay.
or we haven't decided yet, or we're gonna split it like evenly, like certain requirements to meet and like water usage and things like that between both countries, and kind of join the union, just like work together to use that water.
So did anybody talk about a different country division?
Yeah.
We did talk
You
about
did talk about that a little bit,
joining together.
We've talked
Eric?
about more a little about sharing profits.
Sharing profits.
So collaborating the business entity altogether. That's interesting. We have the option of more collaboration, whether you keep governmental entities or not, having more collaborative benefit from what the resources are. That's a useful thought to pursue. Division of territory, joining of territories, joining of business efforts. At war or peace, we haven't decided. We have that option. The more capable you are of carrying out the war side of that, the more likely we are to get the peace side of it. That's world history, right? That's kind of the way Genghis Khan pulled it off, and a few others. You have to have military might, and we've scaled that to current, and we still don't know that that's a good alternative, because that has its cost as well, right? So anyway, it's a made up thing, but it's got a lot of parallels to it. The other two handouts, I'd like you to ponder all three of these, and we'll start class talking about that on Thursday a little bit. The others aren't territory, so if you didn't pick one up, there's one here and one here. One is the issue is over governance, and the other is an issue over people that have been displaced within the same country. We have owls and birds on one. We have a manatee family in power and a transition to a son, junior manatee. And we have the anti-manatites versus the old school ruling family. So we've got conflict. All three of these scenarios have parallels in the modern world that we're living in right now, and I'm not proposing that we can very conveniently solve the problem in Belfast, Ireland, between the Protestants and the Catholic. But aren't they the same kinds of things? People have interests, and then people have positions. And the position is, if you're Catholic, you're bad if you were brought up Protestant. Or perhaps we're in the Golan Heights, and we're looking at if you're Palestinian or if you're Jewish. Howdy. The teacher kept you after school.
She did actually.
I'm aware of that. Jake got there early, and thanks for making the effort to be here. We're just about to watch a video. We've been talking about negotiation, a bunch of handouts here to catch up on, and Larry and Jake can catch you up to speed at break at work.
That depends. Are you a goat or a camel?
Let me read up. And
You'd walk them off with a camel. I can tell you that right now. There's a few that understand where that ad came from. All right, so that's kind of going to be what we are going to talk about further. I want you to go back to the handout. That was the one that we've been talking our way through, and go to page 3 on it, and you're going to see a picture of Herb Cohen on there. And he is the author of this book and many others. You can Google him up. As I mentioned earlier in class, he is no longer living, and so we have to study his legacy that he wrote and videoed and learn from that, because I don't know of another person right now that is of his stature in being a go-to person in trying to help the world negotiate stuff. Like I said, he's worked for a number of presidents of the United States, being called bipartisanly onto a negotiating team representing the interests of the United States. And Henry Kissinger was one of the very public figures over a few administrations that we all maybe remember reading his name, even going back as far as the Kennedy administration, as being one of the minds that was thinking about American positions in some of the crises that we faced around the world. And it was people like Herb Cohen that were on the teams that actually sat down with the bad guys and negotiated as best they could. Some of those negotiations we failed, and some of the negotiations were highly successful. And so he's going to talk about that. We're going to watch a video clip that was, not a clip, it's a long video. It will be the remaining part of class, but it's put together by Network News at one point in time, and we are going to understand that it is pre-PowerPoint. He uses a flip chart. But the points that he's making here, there are some blanks on this page 3 that you will see in the video. I want you to fill in those blanks. When we get to those blanks, we'll have what's one thing you got out of this as an exit on the way out. So be thinking of that as we watch the video together. There's a break in the middle that we will blow through, and we're gonna see the world from Herb Cohen's point of view. Wait a second. Let's put this up on the screen. I guess this is one of the anomalies of PowerPoint. We have to get out of PowerPoint first, and then out of PowerPoint. Then we go to the video, and we can hit go again.
What I want to chat with you about is the subject of negotiations. Negotiations is something that you and I are always involved in, because negotiations is nothing more than the use of information and power to affect behavior within a web of tension. Now, if you think about that definition for a moment, you realize that all of you are doing this all the time. You are doing it not only on the job, doing it off the job as well. With whom do you use information and power to affect behavior off the job? Who do you do this with? Who? Your wives. Husbands negotiate with wives, wives in turn with husbands, and hopefully marriage is a collaborative win-win negotiations for you, Dick. Who else do you negotiate with? Off the job. Who? Children. Parents negotiate with children, children in turn with parents. You negotiate with friends, family, relatives. The point I'm making, of course, is that you're all doing this off the job, but you also do it on the job as well. With whom do you use information and power to affect behavior on the job? Who do you do this with on the job? Your secretary. Yes, bosses negotiate with secretaries. Bosses negotiate with subordinates. Why does a boss, someone presumably with formal authority, have to negotiate with a secretary? They negotiate for commitment. You and I know that the single best way to shaft the boss in today's world, to transform your boss into a shaftee, when you're being the shaftor, is to do exactly what he or she tells you to do. See, when Gail tells me what he wants, I write it down. Is this what you want, Gail? And then I proceed to literally comply. 2 weeks later, Gail comes running up to me and says, what happened? I say, I don't know. I did exactly what you told me to. We even have a name for that in today's world. We call that whole phenomenon malicious obedience. And there are people out there who practice that to a refined art. And so what we're doing as bosses, we're negotiating for commitment. You never want people to do exactly what you tell them to do. You want them to do what you don't tell them to do, what you can't tell them to do, because somehow many problems cannot be anticipated. You also negotiate with your boss. Why does a subordinate negotiate with their boss? They take an idea, a concept that they have, and they try to translate it into action. They sell the idea to the boss based upon the needs of the boss and the values of the organization. That's a negotiation. Who else do we negotiate with? We negotiate with peers. In order for any of you in this room to get your job done, you need the cooperation, help, and support of many people whose box is not aligned beneath your box on an organizational chart with an arrow pointing upward. These are people in different functions, different disciplines, different geographic locales, and all of that involves negotiation skills. You negotiate with clients. You negotiate with customers. You negotiate with suppliers. You negotiate with vendors. You may even negotiate with governmental agencies. You negotiate for appropriations. The point I'm making is that all of you are doing this all the time. You're doing it off the job, and you're doing it on the job as well. In every single negotiation encounter that you and I are involved in, every single one, the same three factors always exist. Number one, information. The other side always seems to know more about you than you know about them. Two, organizational pressure and time. The other side always seems to be under less organizational and time pressures than you're under. And three, power. The other side always seems to have more power than you have. But let me illustrate the universality of these three factors as it relates to any negotiation. Let me give you a simple analogy. You wake up one morning. You go to your refrigerator for a glass of milk. You're going to drink it straight or pour it in your coffee. You open up the refrigerator door. You grasp the carton, the container. It's wet, it's moist, it's clammy. You step back. You notice a pool of water under your refrigerator. You call over the spouse to diagnose the condition. And the spouse gives you the technical name for the problem, broken refrigerator. All right, the two of you get together. You say, I think we need a new refrigerator. Let us go off to a one-price store, a place where we will not be hassled, where we will make this acquisition. Let us go to a Sears, a Ward's, a Kmart's, a Gimbel's, a Macy's, a Hudson's, whatever your version of this one-price store might be. Now, your two children are at home. You can't leave them alone. Go. Both of you get in the automobile. We're going to make this acquisition. On the way there, you even discuss your cash flow problem. We're not that liquid right now, and so we'd like to spend about $450 for this acquisition. In other words, you've established a behavioral objective. You have a figure in mind. You now drive to the store, and you get out of the automobile, and you walk in. Your organization is trailing behind you. And you approach the appropriate section where you spy a refrigerator that meets your needs. As you approach the refrigerator, you notice a potential problem. Because on top of this refrigerator, there's a sign which says 48995. Now this sign is not scrawled like I have scrawled it here. It is block printed. It is professionally done. It is symmetrical, as if it were placed there by the big printer in the sky. You call over the salesperson, and the salesperson ambles over. Yes, may I be of assistance to you? You go, yeah, I very much would like to chat with you about this refrigerator. He says, you like it? I certainly do. He says, good. I'll write up the slip. You go, no. Maybe we can discourse. He says, sir, madam, when you've finished discoursing, you'll find me in hardware. And off he walks into the store. Now I ask you, is this going to be an easy or difficult negotiation encounter? What is your experience? Easy or tough? Tough. For most people in this culture, it is difficult. And why is it difficult? It is difficult for these three factors. One, information. What do you know about the salesperson you're dealing with and the needs of that salesperson? See, very little, the way I set this up. An emergency occurred. I threw you right into the event. Is the salesman you're dealing with on salary, commission, or a combination of both? I don't know. Does he have a budget, a deadline, a quota? Where does he stand relative to that budget, deadline, or quota? I don't know. What's their itemized cost on this model? I don't know. What's their inventory situation like? I don't know. You don't know too much about these people, now do you? Do they know something about you? Yes, because the husband and wife are standing there. They're talking about their old refrigerator, their new refrigerator, their cash flow problem. They even periodically ask questions. They say, "Sir, ma'am, if I should purchase this refrigerator, I'm not saying I will, but if perchance I might, when do you think you might be delivering it?" Notice the salesman will never respond directly to that question, which would give you information, but rather asks another question. "When would you like it delivered?" You say, "How about early this afternoon?" He says, "Why so soon?" You say, "Well, we got about $70 worth of food spoiling rapidly." Does he like that information? Oh, yeah. See, you've now exposed your deadline without knowing his deadline. See, the longer you're there, the more the informational disparity tends to increase. In addition, information is the problem of organizational pressure and time. This person you're dealing with seems to be under no organizational pressure whatsoever. His organization is not visible. He's walking around totally relaxed. "Hi there. Make up your mind?" As if he's on his way to pick a mango or papaya. Totally relaxed. How about you? Where's your organization? It's there, but it's not united. The wife says, "Let's go." The husband says, "Let's stay," or vice versa. How about the two children you brought into the store with you? Where do you think they are? You think they are beside the refrigerator at parade rest, waiting for the sale to be consummated? No, they're not. One kid is playing hide-and-go-seek in refrigerators. Where is he? I think he's in the yellow one, the one with the door closed. If we don't get him out in 3 minutes, the child will suffocate. Where's the other kid? He's at the far end of the store with a hockey stick and a plastic puck. He's shooting slap shots against washer dryers. And every 15 minutes he hollers down, "Come on, the game's starting." Your organization is putting the screws to you, and this guy's walking around. "Hi there. Make up your mind?" See, in addition to all of this, there's the problem of power. And power is manifested in two forms in this situation. One, the power of precedent, and two, the power of legitimacy. What do I mean by the power of precedent? Most people in this culture, certainly in the West, believe you cannot negotiate with a one-price store. I mean, otherwise, why would they call them a one-price store? See, if you misnomer. If you believe you cannot negotiate with a one-price store, you obviously do not try to negotiate with a one-price store, which results in your failing to negotiate with a one-price store, which goes to prove you're right after all in thinking you can't negotiate with a one-price store. See, what most of us do is we create our own self-fulfilling prophecies. We take our own experience, and my experience is very limited compared to the experience of a group like this, compared to any few of you, certainly. But I generalize off that experience. It's like universal. I develop assumptions, I've got expectations, and that governs my performance. Have you ever seen people who know they can't do something? They know they can't do it. They never did it before. But they heard from a friend that maybe you could. Their very approach will contain the seeds of failure. They walk up to that particular, item that they're interested in purchasing, and they walk up, they go, the salesman knows what you want. He says, "What's the problem here?" You go, "Here. Is there something wrong with the sign?" You go, No, it's the what? He wants to make you say the words. And finally you blurt it out, "The price." He says, "Please, sir. Hey, this is Sears or Wards." You go, "Oh, I didn't realize where it was." Hey, at this point, my wife will turn on her heel and walk out of the store. And over her shoulder, she will say to me, "I'm never going shopping with you again," which, by the way, is not all that bad, because I have accomplished a collateral objective in the process. The point, of course, I'm trying to make is that every one of you have got to force yourself outside your own experience. Most people I know have expectation levels that are too low. In addition to the power of precedent, there's the power of legitimacy. Legitimacy tends to be manifested in terms of signs, printed forms, or documents. If I were to suggest any of you in this room that you do something, you would evaluate my request based upon your needs. And if the two of them mesh together, you might comply. But if a sign told you to do something, your chances of complying would be much greater. Would you buy that? Look, Holiday Inn has a checkout time of 1 p.m. What percentage of the people do you think check out at a Holiday Inn checkout time? Would you hazard a guess as to what that figure is? What do you think it is? 95%. Don't you think that's a high number? I do. What do I say that? In a good year, Carol, 55% of the people vote, but 95% check out by the checkout time? I mean, it's unbelievable. See, what causes that lemming-like migration of people to the cashier at the appointed hour? I mean, why does that occur? Well, 5 years ago, I happened to be at a Holiday Inn. I'd stayed there before, so I knew when checkout time was. It was 1 p.m. 12:30, I'd go down to check out. There was no one in front of the cashier. But then I remembered this place has a buffet luncheon, so I said to myself, get the buffet luncheon, come back. How many people will be there? See, I'll put it on my bill. That made sense to me at the time. 2, 3 people, I'll wait. I come back, there are 28 people lined up in front of the cashier. I couldn't believe it. How do you go from 0 to 28 and a half hours? So I start looking at all these people online. I couldn't believe they were all checkouts. And then I realized they look like checkouts. But they're undoubtedly tourists. They are touring the area. Why should I wait on this line, which is obviously not my line? I would form the real checkout line. So I start passing all these people, forming the real checkout line. Now, as I am passing them, I notice they're not looking at me with love. And even I, as I neared the front of the line, became a little embarrassed. I made one of these. Like it is always my custom to fly around the hotel lobby. Now, I flew over to the last person on the line and banked right in. I said, hey, what's the line for? Guy says, checkout. I says, how come? He says, checkout time, that's how come. I said, well, how'd you know about it? So I read it off my door. That's how I knew. That is a very significant comment. The guy saw it emblazoned on his door. And that's why he's there. A subordinate walks into a boss and says, Pete, I'd like a raise. Does Pete ever say no? He says, you certainly deserve a raise. However is synonymous with strike that. He pushes away a piece of paper on his desk, points to a printed card embedded under glass. Says, but it's unfortunate that you're at the top of your pay grade. Oh, the top of my pay grade. You don't expect me to negotiate with a printed card embedded under glass, now do you? 20 years ago, I used to be involved in real estate law. People would come into me to have leases signed. I don't know how many of you in this room have ever signed a lease. Most people don't read them. They sign them. Once in a while, you do get an intellectual type. Someone says, I'd like to read that lease. I think it's my constitutional right to do so. Here's how you deal with that. You say, of course, read the lease. They get halfway down. They say, wait a second. This document makes me an indentured servant for the term of the lease. And you say, it may do that, but it's a standard form. The guy goes, oh, standard form. Can I change something? Not on a standard form. It's got the number right in the corner. And if he still persists, you say our legal people won't approve of it. The legal people don't even know they won't approve of it, but it tends to work like a charm. See, there's no wonder that you and I are having a difficult time negotiating in this particular situation. Why are we having a difficult time? For these 3 factors that I indicated. 1, information. They know more about you than you know about them. And the longer you're there, the worse it gets. Number 2, they don't seem to be under the same kind of organizational and time constraints that you feel you're under. And 3, it appears to you that they've got more power than you have. And power is based upon perception. If you think you got it, whether you have it or not, you got it. And if you think you don't have it, even if you got it, you don't have it. But I say to you that this is negotiable. Why am I so certain that this is negotiable? Because anything that's the product of a negotiation has got to be negotiable. See, how does any one-price store, no matter what its name is, come up with this price? You know how it happened. The marketing people said, hey, let's make it $4.50. We move a lot of refrigerators and hypo the morale of the sales team. The financial people say, prudence dictates. We all. If we sell a refrigerator, obviously it should be the profit. Make that $5.40. The advertising people say, psychologically, our studies show the best number, $4.99.99. And someone said, look, we got a business to run here. Can we get together? They did. They got together and came up with that. That is the product of this. And anything that is the product of a negotiation has got to be negotiable. I'm not saying to you here this morning, today, that everything is negotiable. I'm saying that which is the product of a negotiation has got to be negotiable. See, that rules out certain things as far as some of you are concerned. The 10 Commandments, for example, was not a negotiated document. Would you buy that? It is difficult to negotiate with the Lord when the Lord presents you with a fait accompli written on stone. The Sermon on the Mount was not the product of a negotiation. Christ did not get together with some followers and say, hey, give me your input, we'll form a task force, break out into subcommittees, and work something out. Since those items were not the product of a negotiation, they are presumably not negotiable. But why are you and I putting this crummy sign in the same category? It is the product of a negotiation, and therefore it is negotiable. Now, if you say to me, do you negotiate with one-price stores? I'll be honest with you. One of my life strategies is not to go into one-price stores. But whether you and I do or don't negotiate anything, that should be in part our decision. See, and what should that decision be based upon? 1, are you comfortable negotiating in this situation? 2, will negotiations meet your needs? 3, is the expenditure of energy and time on your part worth the benefits that you can achieve? And if the answer for you as an individual in this instance are yes to those 3 questions, I say to you, sally forth. Of course you can do it. See, what I'd like all of you to have is a greater sense of mastery over your own situation, to pick and choose your own spots, to feel a greater degree of power. Some of you in this room have successfully negotiated with one-price establishments, have you not? Or if you have not, you know people that have. Tell me, what are some of the things that you and I could say to these people to get them to negotiate? What do people say? What could you say? Yeah, is this your best price? And you start getting information from the other side. And information is crucial. What else can you and I say?
When's it going to be on sale?
Yes. When is it going to be on sale? Or conversely, did I miss it? See, the assumption is if it's not on sale, it either will be or just was. And why should I be penalized for my awkward timing? What else can you say?
That's more money than I want to spend.
That's more money than I want to spend. In fact, you might even say to the guy, look, hey, you're selling, I'm buying, I only want to spend $4.50. Here it is. $4.50, take it or leave it. Watch, he'll follow me right out that store. Does he follow him? No, even turn around when you get outside and you peer in. Gone. See, what I did was I transformed what Gail gave me into an ultimatum. By the way, do any of you ever give ultimatums in a negotiation? I think you do. See, you may not do it the way I did it, because I'm dramatizing, but you occasionally do. Do ultimatums ever work? Yeah, sometimes they do. Hey, what determines whether an ultimatum works? It's how you set it up. You see, I went in there without any relationship between Gail and myself. Hey, I said, look, $4.50, take it or leave it. It's very easy for him to say leave it. What if I did it differently? I said, hi, Gail. I'm interested in buying a refrigerator. That's Monday at 2 p.m. when it's real slow. He shows me every line he's got in stock, 2 to 4 p.m. Tuesday, my wife and I come in at 2 p.m. We see every refrigerator he's got. Wednesday, the 2 of us return with a refrigerator engineering specialist, my mother-in-law. And the 3 of us see refrigerators. And Thursday, I come in on my own. I go, hello, Gail. You remember me? He goes, yeah. I say, I'm interested in buying a refrigerator. He says, I hope so. I say, look, I only have $450. I got a magic marker, 80 cents and change, a paper clip, and a book of matches. This is all I got. Help me. And now I start to walk out. Does he follow me now? Why? Because he's got an investment in the situation. He says to himself, this guy is a yo-yo and a jerk. But the devil known is better than the devil unknown. And who knows what else lurks out there on the street. See, it is upon this basis that a tactic known as the nibble works. Let me describe the nibble to you. Some of you may not be familiar with this term, but when I tell you about it, you're going to recognize it at once. You go into an exclusive tailor in the downtown area, a men's shop in the downtown area where you reside. One of the finest clothiers in the area. You want to buy a suit. You got a big wedding coming up, you want to look good. You're concerned that the suits stay in style. Men's lapels nowadays get larger and smaller, causing obsolescence to occur, like women's clothes have for years. And so into the store you go with a tape measure to measure lapels. You spend 3.5 hours in the store, you try on 39 suits, you measure 78 lapels. The salesman has it about up to here with you. He's about to blow his cool when suddenly you say, I'll take that Hickey Freeman right there for $270. He breathes a sigh of relief and he starts writing up the sales slip. And he takes you to that little room in the rear where you've all been. You know that little room where they do the alterations? And he stand you in front of that wooden box, on that wooden box, in front of that three-way mirror. And there you are, looking at yourself in your new suit. Now the salesman's over here, writing up the sales slip, calculating the commission. He's feeling quite relaxed. Beside you, as you stand on that wooden box in front of that three-way mirror, is always an elderly guy. You know that guy? He's bent somewhat. And he's got this tape measure around his neck. He's got these pins in his mouth. He's usually down on one knee or in a crouch. He's taking these pins, he's shoving them in your cuff, he's chalking you up the rear, and he's got you in 3 inches on a crotch. And he's always saying to you, this is a beautiful suit. It hangs well on you. Wherever you go, that guy's got some kind of accent. It may not even be an accent. It could be the pins. Now, all of this is going on at once. You got the picture? You're standing there looking at yourself in your new suit. Salesman's writing up the sales slip, calculating the commission. Hey, guy on the floor shoving in the pins, making a chalk mark. When suddenly you turn to the salesman and say, and what kind of tie will you be throwing in free? The salesman stops writing. He looks at the guy on the floor. The guy on the floor looks up. He didn't know whether to shove in another pin or make another chalk mark. He lets go of your crotch. The whole thing swings forward 3 inches. Ladies and gentlemen, that's what we call a nibble. Now, what is going on in the mind of the salesman after the first wave of hate has disappeared? He's doing a cost-benefit analysis of the situation. He's saying to himself, 3.5 hours of my time, 39 suits I put on this person's back, 78 lapels I watched him measure, as opposed to taking $7 out of my pocket, buying him or her a tie wholesale and hoping I never see him again. Will you get that tie? Yes. Will you win the love and admiration of the salesperson? An entirely different question. See, why do they capitulate? They capitulate because of the investment that was made in the situation. And so you always want to approach people so that they make an investment. Every approach in negotiation should always be collaborative. Okay? Collaborative. So they make that investment. We've got a mythology in the West about top executives, which tell us how to dress and how to walk and how to behave. See, all top executives look a certain way, or supposed to. They look like Robert Goulet on a good day, like Long Green on the Ponderosa with Horse, Little Joe and Adam, striding behind, and they stride about. Oh, they're top executive, moving about. They all have depth and resonance in their voice, men and women, same thing. These are the kind of people you say to them, ever have a pimple? They go, huh? They don't even know what you're talking about. See, these are the kind of people that have been up all night drinking excessively. They've had 2 hours sleep. You shake them in the middle of the night, you go, get up. They go, oh, they're top executive, rising. I say to you that all of that may be a total fraud. In fact, I'm going to suggest to you that in dealing with people, especially in today's world, occasionally, dumb is better than smart. Inarticulate may be better than articulate. And you and I ought to train ourselves once in a while to say, I don't know. I don't understand. Help me. See, I hope after this you do not stride out saying, tough negotiator, ready to do battle, make command decisions. Hope you walk around saying, boy, I need help. Help me. And you will get the process working for you. See, think of your own experience in dealing with stupid people. What happens when you deal with a moron who cannot comprehend what you're even talking about? What happens to all your sophisticated arguments? They become worthless. Let us assume, for the sake of argument, that Carl stuttered. He doesn't stutter, but I think he does. I go, Carl, what is your objection to making this deal? He goes, ninit. What does that mean, ninit? That means number one, I'll bet. He goes, all right, now you just tell me what number one is. He goes, the what? The price. Number one's the price. Good, now we're rolling. Now, what's number two? He goes, did delivery, huh? Good. Now, one price, two delivery, what's three? The quality, right? What's four? Reliability. What has Carl said? Not a word. I perceive the guy's got a disability. What am I doing? I'm helping the son of a gun. My wife even points out to me that when I speak to blind people, I raise my voice. Why am I doing that? I don't know. I'm trying to help them see. See, it's exactly the same thing. And so what I am saying to you is that if you want an ultimatum of yours to work, when should it work? At the beginning or at the end of a negotiation encounter? At the end, always. After the other side has made an investment in the situation. See, there are so many things that you and I could say in this particular situation. Probably the most common thing that people say is they point to the defect or flaw on the floor model. They go, yeah, a little scratch. As I look at it, I notice a little scratch, a little defect, a little blemish. Back, as the light hits it, I notice multiple blemi on the side of this refrigerator. You got a refrigerator here with multiple blemi. Is there no multiple blemi discount? The standard MVD. Now, what if there are no blemi on the refrigerator? What might you do then? Create blem. Good. You make blemi, yes. Yes, I'm not covering ethics here now. We're dealing only with options. You're going to be more sophisticated than that. Hey, kid with the stick in a buck, shoot him from over here. See, but the point I'm making is, even if there are no blemi, that doesn't mean there are no blemi. That means with the naked eye, one cannot observe the external blemi. But people have opening and closing the door for months now. Boom! Internal trauma exists within that refrigerator, and you always entitled to the internal trauma discount, the standard ITD. Hey, what else can you say? You can say what if. What if I buy 6? What if I buy a washer dryer, a lop line? What if I take the delivery myself? You can get off this item and talk about something collateral. Trading. You do this with automobiles. You do it with refrigerators. You break down the cost of this item. See, all you're dealing with here is a situation where the other side says $489.50 meets their needs. Now, they're entitled to have their needs met if your needs are met as well. If you could show them where this model doesn't meet your needs, their needs should not be fully met. And so people who don't even know what they're doing, Gail, they stagger in off the street. They go, what color does this come in? Guy says, 32 colors. What are they? What are they? What are the 32 colors? He gives you 32 colors. When he finishes, you say, is that it? I mean, is that it? What are you looking for? Well, out of the psychedelic kitchen, these colors will clash. See, people will do it with ice makers. I notice this comes with an ice maker. Yes, it does. 24 hours a day, you can have ice. Well, that's the problem. I have a child with a bad throat. Doctor said, no ice. Can you remove the ice maker? The guy said, it's the whole door. All right, what if we promise not to use it? Would that affect the price? Hey? See, now, to be honest with you, I am not concerned with whether you ever negotiate with a one-price store. I am concerned with whether you believe, one, that more things are negotiable than you and I even realize. Two, anything that's the product of a negotiation has got to be negotiable. And three, whether you do or don't negotiate depends upon you and your needs, because you're a party to this situation. I've also said to you that the process of negotiation is very important. Always approach people collaboratively. Train yourself to say, I don't know, I don't understand, help me. And you will get the process working for you. They will make an investment. What I'm also saying to you is that in every single negotiation encounter that you and I are involved in, these three factors will always exist. I don't care what your negotiation is. Whether it's a geopolitical negotiation internationally, whether it's dealing with a hotel that's giving away your guaranteed reservation, whether it's collective bargaining, whether it's purchasing, whether it's dealing with a workforce of a new generation. I don't care what you're talking about. These three factors are always there. Analyze these factors, maximize yourself in these three areas, and you're going to be more effective and more successful in every one of your encounters.
I'm not going to do the exercise right now. We're going to go through that.
Let me discuss with you these three factors. Let me talk with you first about power, because probably of these items, the most misunderstood is power. What do I mean by power? Power is nothing more than the capacity or ability to get things done, to exercise control over people, events, situations, and oneself. It is the production of intended effects, or someone's perception that you can produce those effects. If you listen to those definitions, and if you read it here, you realize that power itself is neutral. See, power itself is not good, it's not bad, it's not moral, it's not immoral, it's not ethical, it's not unethical, it's neutral. But it is based upon perception. If you think you got it, and can convey that to others, boy, do you have it. Well, let me illustrate that point. A prisoner is in solitary confinement. You know, in solitary confinement, they take away your shoelaces and your belt. They don't want you to hurt yourself. They are saving you for them for later on. All right, now this person is walking around, holding up their pants, crave a little cigarette. God was smoking their brand, so they walk over to that steel door and they knock. God ambles over. What do you want? I'd like a cigarette, please, the kind you're smoking. Bam! The guard slams the bolt. Why? Because the guard perceives that the prisoner is powerless. But the prisoner thinks he's got power. He goes back over. Hi there. I'd like a cigarette. Before you slam the bolt, if I don't get it within the next 30 seconds, here's what's going to happen. You see this head? I'm going to bang it up against that concrete wall until I'm bloody and unconscious. And when they revive me, I intend to swear that you did it. Now, they're never going to believe me. But think of all the hearings you'll be attending. Think of all the reports in triplicate you'll be filling out. Think of all the administrivia you'll be enmeshed in. Think of all the commissions you'll be testifying before. As opposed to giving me one crummy cigarette, and I promise not to bother you again. Can a guy get that cigarette? Yeah. Yeah, why? Because the guard's doing a little cost-benefit analysis of the situation. See, why can he get that cigarette? For three reasons. Number one, the prisoner believes he's got options in that situation, as bad as it may seem. Two, he's willing to take risks. And three, he thinks he's got power. Everybody has more power than they think they have. Everybody. But you got to start off believing you got power so you can convey that to others. Because power is all perception. Let me talk with you about some of the sources of power that you and I have. Just some of these sources. One, the power of competition. You always must generate competition for something that you have. I'm not just talking about a product or a service, I'm even talking about an idea. If I went into my boss and I said, Carol, I have a wonderful idea I think you'll love. Carl, wonderful idea I think you'll love. They say to me, have you spoken to anyone else about it? Yes, a number of your peers. Well, what do they think? They thought it was stupid, but I think you'll like it. You think that enhances the value of that idea? No. Is it easier to get a job when you have a job or when you don't have a job? When you have a job. Do banks want to give loans to people that need loans or people that don't need loans? Is it a good approach to walk into your banker and say, Dick, I'm a destitute person. Save me from the throes of bankruptcy. You could do a wonderful humanitarian gesture by helping me out. Said absolutely no collateral. Well, you'll be inscribed in the big book in the next world. Does that work with your bankers? No. No, I tell you how to get bank loans. Get dressed in your grade 3-piece bank loan suit. Get a phony Phi Beta cap, a key, and a gold watch fob. Dress 3 of your friends the same way. That's your entourage. Now walk through the bank. All right, there, walking through the bank. Keep away from me, Dick, with your lousy money. I'm merely here to make a phone call. That guy will follow you right out onto the street and halfway home. By the way, that's the Burt Lance theory of money acquisition. Why did everybody want to give this person, Bert Lance, money? Because they thought he didn't need it. As soon as they figured out he really needed the money to pay back other loans, his sources tended to dry up. And so I'm saying to you, always generate competition for anything. Generate that competition. Always believe you've got options. And everybody always has an option. One option that we always have is the future. See, power is not a constant. You may have more power than I do right now, Carol. But how about the future? How about in 3 months? How about in 6 months? Power goes up and power goes down. And so the future is always negotiable. The second item is legitimacy. I mentioned this to you before. Legitimacy is the printed word, the printed form, the document. Did you ever watch the Alan Funt show, the Candid Camera show on TV? By the way, all of that is based upon legitimacy. You know that. Did you remember when Alan Funt successfully closed down the state of Delaware for an hour and a half? Are you familiar with that? Let me tell you what he did. Very simply, he placed a large sign on a major highway leading into Delaware. And the sign said, Delaware closed. And you would see vehicles would drive up on this major highway. And apparently they see the sign because they move off the road. And they wouldn't sit in their cars. They'd get out of their car for half a mile. Cars, rigs are lined up. And they walk up to the sign and ask Funt. They go, hey, what's the story on Delaware? And Funt said, you see the sign? The guy said, yeah, but I live here. I've got a family. When do you think it'll reopen? Legitimacy is indeed potent. The third item is risk-taking. You must be willing to take risks in every encounter. As Flip Wilson once said, you want to hit the jackpot? Put a quarter in a machine. And he's right. You've got to take risks. Now, I'm not advocating that any of you in this room engage in gambling or rolling dice or shooting craps. I am talking to you about the importance of incremental or moderate risk, which must be built into every situation if you're going to achieve anything worthwhile. But let me show you what the problem is, even with incremental or moderate risk. I have brought with me a 25-cent piece, a standard United States coin, quarter. George Washington on one side, American Eagle on the other. George Washington known as heads, American Eagle known as tails. I'm about to do the traditional coin flip, valid in almost all cultures. That is where they have coins. All right? Now, if you call this correctly, I will give you $1 million. Call it correctly, I give you $1 million. Make the wrong call, you only have to give me $100,000. I do this one time with you as an individual, only one time. We will exchange money this afternoon at the conclusion of our session. You get $1 million if you're right, but you only have to give me $100,000 if you're wrong. I do this one time with you as an individual. Assuming that this is a legitimate bet, we're not kidding around. How many of you in this room, honestly now, would take that bet? Raise your hands, let me see. Nobody? Now, let me be presumptuous enough to suggest what many of you are thinking. As I made you that proposition, were you thinking, hey, I wonder what I'm doing with $1 million? Am I going to come up with a little tax shelter? No. You know, you're thinking, where am I going to get $100,000? No, I'm a little short right now until payday. In fact, some of you who are very imaginative even see yourself coming home, walking in the house, and someone saying, how'd that session go? It's okay. Anything happen unusual? He brought in a guy with a quarter. He's doing a coin flip. Hey, honey, how liquid are we around here? Anything lying around in cash? See, most of us are thinking of losing, and that's what prevents us from taking that bet. If the late Howard Hughes or the late J. Porgetti, someone with a lot of money, were in the back of this room, would they take that bet? Why? Because they're better business people than you are? They're smarter? No. They got something we don't have. Money. And there's an old saying that money makes money. Money enables you to exploit propitious opportunities because the risk is only incremental or moderate for you. All of you here know that that's a very good bet. You know that's a good bet. How can we take those risks? See, the problem is that 100,000. If we could syndicate it, if we could spread it out, if we could lay it all, we could take it. In other words, if I said to you, look, forget the $1 million and $100,000. Let's do 110. How many of you would take that? Raise your hands. Yeah. So a lot of you say, knock off the rest of the stuff. Let's flip our way through the day. But the point I'm making is, hey, that's the same bet. Why can you handle it? Because losing is manageable for you. And that's what you want to do with your risk-taking. You want to spread it out. You want to syndicate it. You want to diffuse it. So you never say, this is my idea, this is my program, this is my proposal, and if anything goes wrong, I'll go down with it. Are you crazy? You never do that. You say, we in this together. See, you get others involved. And this way, if others are involved, you spread the stress, you have more power through commitment, and you diffuse the risk. And that commitment will tend to give you a great deal of power. The fifth item is investment. You always want to get people to invest. See, that's what makes them more malleable. Why was it so difficult for the United States to extricate itself from the war in Vietnam? Because 40,000 American lives were invested in that war. And we don't walk away from human investment that fast. You buy 2 stocks, 2 bonds, 2 investments. One goes up and one goes down. Which one are you more likely to sell first? The one that went up. How about this one? You hang on to this for a while. Might even buy more. Looks better now, the price. That's how large losses are sustained by governmental agencies or corporations. What do we got in that already? 20? Might as well go for another 10. Recognize that principle of human nature. So you always operate to get people to make an investment. How do you do that? In a negotiation with anyone, if you've got a difficult issue to negotiate, usually the difficult issues are quantifiable. You know what I mean? It can be stated numerically, like price, rate, or salary. When should you negotiate those things? At the beginning or at the end? At the end, after the investment is made. Now, what does that mean? You know, specifically, Bill and I start here. We talk about, right at the starting point, item number 1. Now, my boss has told me, before I went out to see Bill, Esther told me, don't give him number 2. Don't give him what he wants. You can play around with the others, but don't give him number 2. Bill and I start out. We talk about item number 1. He states his position, I state mine. There's difficulty, but we work it out. Progress. Item number 2, he states his position, I state mine. There's a lot of difficulty. That's the price, the rate item. We can't work it out. No progress. We come back to that later on. Now no progress. Item number 3, states his position, I state mine, work it out. Item number 4, we have enormous difficulty, but we struggle and we work it out. Item number 5, we work it out. Now, look where Bill is. Here's the finish line. He can smell the roses. This is almost within his grasp. Now I say, Bill, can we go back to number 2? No. Okay, he says, sure. I say, Bill, I need the whole thing. He said, well, maybe we can compromise. I say, no compromise, Bill. I need the whole thing. Now look where Bill is. He could smell the roses. If he breaks off with me, and he's got to start off with Gail. He's got to start off at square number 1. And for all he knows, Gail's a lot worse than I am. See, the investment that Bill has made in bringing him from here to here tends to make him more malleable. And that's why you get people to make investment, because they tend to be more flexible and much better listeners. See, what's the alternative? The alternative is to say to Bill, look, Bill, I'll level with you. Before we even talk, you're never going to get number 2. What does he say? See you later. Go right over here to Gail. So you always want people to make that investment. The 6th item is persistence. Persistence is the power. What carbon is to steel. If a rat gnaws long enough at a dike, it will sink an entire nation. Most people don't persist, and you've got to persist. You got to be steadfast. You got to stay with it. That's how Jimmy Carter, President of the United States, got that Camp David agreement signed, you know, with respect to the Mideast. It's all persistent. Jimmy Carter, as a president, probably is one of the most boring people around. I say that he's a person of, in my opinion, a lot of integrity, a lot of fundamental decency, but he's not an exhilarating speaker. You spend 12 minutes with him, you swear someone slipped you sedative. When he gives a fireside chat, the fire goes out. Now, here's what this person did. He took all these people to Camp David. Camp David is not what you call a swinging action spot. It is not the Sodom and Gomorrah of the Western world. It's a very boring place. Had all these people there for 10, 11, 12 days, and every day he's coming around, hatch in the corner, ready for another 10, 12 boring hours of the same stuff. By the end of the 13th day, if you were Sadat and Begin, you would have signed anything to get out of there. And so they get the Camp David peace agreement. Really, an admirable quality that President Carter had. Persistence. Item number 7 is your attitude. Who is the worst person that you and I negotiate for? Who? Yourself. I don't know if that's true with everybody, but I know that is true with me. Hey, I do a lot of work negotiating for other people, and I, get paid based upon results, and I do well. See, why am I so effective negotiating for other people? Hey, why am I so effective negotiating for Pam? You know what? I'll be honest with you. I don't care that much about you, Pam. See, when I negotiate for Pam, it's a game. I'm having fun. So what if everything goes wrong? You know what I mean? I go home. I'm having fun. See, I don't care. It's a game. For Pam, it's the world of illusion, where things are seldom what they seem. Even skim milk masquerades as cream. And when you strip away the phony tinsel, what do you find underneath? The real tinsel. I'm having fun, a game. When I negotiate for myself, that's no game. You know what I mean? It's no joke, no game. It's the serious stuff. You know what I mean? It's me, my children, my family. See, I care a lot about me. And caring as much as I do about me, I'm not as effective. I ought to hire Pam to negotiate for me, realistically. And what I am saying to you, in essence, is you're better off if you view all of this as a game, and it is. It's the world of illusion. And you want to view it that way. So you always say to yourself in every negotiation, whether it's for others or yourself, what's the worst that can happen here? And if it does, will life go on? It will. Will I remember this in 20 years? I won't. Who cares? Do that, and I guarantee you, you're going to get much better results. See, 3 things are going to happen. 1, you're going to get better results because people are going to perceive you've got power. Because you care, but you don't care that much. And they're going to follow you. Number 2, you're going to have a lot more energy, because we always have a lot of energy to do those things that we enjoy doing. Even if we're fat and exhausted, we come home from work, and someone says, hey, want to go out and play a little tennis, a little racquetball? Get a surge of energy you never thought was there. You're engaged in a game. And 3, you will find out that you have a lot less stress, less uric acid in your bloodstream, less hypertension. You can even minimize the jogging somewhat. And so if you believe you got power and you develop this kind of attitude, believe me, you're going to be much better off. Fact is, one of my folk heroes once said to Reverend Ike, Reverend Ike was walking through his congregation one day, was telling people, do not worry. Never worry, never be concerned. One guy raised his hand and said, Reverend Ike, I have serious worries. He said, well, forget it. He said, no, you don't understand, Reverend. Let me tell you what my worries are. I said, all right, what are they? He said, you see over the bank, $6,000. The loan is due tomorrow. I don't have a nickel in my pocket, and I'm worried. To which the Reverend Ike replied in his infinite wisdom, what are you worried about? But the bank got serious problems. See, and that's what it's all about. Develop that attitude, believe you've got power. The other 2 items that I raised previously that are significant are information and time. Let me talk with you. I've spoken to you about power. Let me talk with you about time. In every single negotiation, there is a deadline or there is a perceived deadline. All right. Let's assume that this is the deadline. See, we tend to talk about things in terms of deadline. The negotiation has a beginning and it has an end. Now let's say the deadline is midnight. Usually midnight, they have deadlines. Why, I don't know. All right, midnight. Now, if this be the beginning of the negotiation event, and this be the deadline, when will most concession behavior occur? At point A, at point B, at point C, or at point D? D. By the way, that is true in every single negotiation. I'm not talking about collective bargaining. I'm talking about something like filing your income tax return. People, even who have money coming back, tend to wait till the end. Give a secretary 7 days to type something up. When will you get it back? 7th day. Give a child 2 months to make out a term paper. When will it come in? Right at the end, if you're lucky. The last day. Hey, we're all affected by deadlines. Now, what does that mean? If I know your deadline and you don't know my deadline, who's going to have more power? Hey, if you're a literalist, John, about deadlines, and I'm more flexible, I say there's a deadline and there's a deadline, I'll also have more power. Well, let me show you how I first began to think about this. I learned this the hard way. 20 years ago, I worked for an outfit that was operating internationally. I was not, but the corporation was. I had one of these top management positions, though, where they would say, hey, Cohen, 2 with cream, 2 with sugars. You know, one of those key spots. And people would come back from overseas. And you know how you meet people in the morning for breakfast? You say, hey, where you been? I haven't seen you for a while. And they would say, oh, I just came back from Singapore, pieced together this $9 million deal. Where you been? I was in Abu Dhabi. I didn't even know where those places were. And then they would be polite. They'd say, where you been? I said, well, I went to the zoo, botanic garden. I'm looking forward to the aquarium. I had nothing to talk about. I think young people need war stories. I used to go to my boss every Friday, say, please, give me a shot at the big time. Send me out there. Let me be a negotiator. I bothered this person so much they eventually sent me to Tokyo to deal with the Japanese. There's going to be a 14-day encounter, all by myself. I'm going to do well. I've taken out these books on the Japanese mentality, their psychology. I'm pouring over this material, and flying along. Plane lands in Tokyo. I'm going to do well. I'm the first guy down the ramp. I'm ready to go. 2 little Japanese gentlemen are waiting for me at the foot of the ramp, and they're bowing like this. 4 customs. I like that quite a bit. They helped me through customs. They put me in this large limousine. I'm seated there in the rear all by myself. And you know, they're on these fold-up seats. I said, why don't you people join me? They said, oh, no, you're an important person here. You obviously need your rest. I like that quite a bit. We are now driving along. One of them turns around and says to me, by the way, do you know the language? I said, you mean Japanese? He said, yes, that's what we speak in Japan. I said, well, no, but I have a little dictionary. I hope to learn a few expressions. They said, are you concerned about getting back to your plane on time? Up to that moment, I had not been concerned. But if I didn't know the language, I think I should start being concerned. They said, would you like this limousine to pick you up? I thought that was nice. Hey, gee, I reach into my pocket, I hand them my ticket, and they write down all the data, so the limo would know when to get me. I didn't realize it then. But now, they know my deadline. I didn't know their deadline. So I think we're going to start negotiating. For the first 7 days, they send me to Kyoto to visit shrines. They enroll me in an English language course, in Zen, to study their people, their religion. 4.5 hours a night, they're even giving me entertainment. Gagako dancing. There's some kind of dancing done in the Imperial Palace. I'm sitting on a hardwood floor with a cushion. 4.5 hours a night. I didn't get a hemorrhoid then. I'm never going to get one. I'm begging these people to negotiate. They say plenty of time. We begin the 12th day. We end early to play golf. We start the 13th day. We end early for the farewell dinner. The morning of the 14th, we resume in earnest. We're just about to get to the crux of things when suddenly, limousine pulls up to take me to the airport. We all pile in, we continue to negotiate, and just as we arrive at the airport, we consummate the deal. How well do you think I did in that encounter? For many years, my organization described it as the first great Japanese victory since Pearl Harbor. Why? Those people knew my deadline, but I didn't know their deadline. It's the same thing happened in today's world. It happens even with the most experienced negotiators. You remember when the United States wanted to extricate itself from the war in Vietnam? We're trying to get the North Vietnamese to negotiate with us. And what are they saying? We don't care if we ever negotiate. We've been fighting this war for 627 years. In fact, you know, we could fight another 120 years. A 32-year war would be a quickie for us. Americans were saying, 32-year quickie? I mean, I can't believe this. They are acting like they've got no deadline. I say to you, the other side has always got a deadline. They're always under stress and they're always under pressure. But they mask it from me. See, Martha or Ginny come to see me, and they just walk in, just passing through. So I was going from New York to Chicago. I always go by way of Houston, Texas. See, I'm saying to you, when anybody shows up, they're there for a reason. They're under stress and they're under pressure and they mask it from you. Believe that. Take it as an article of faith. 4 days before the deadline of an American presidential election, the North Vietnamese agreed to go to Paris. The United States sends Abraham Harriman over there to negotiate with him. Do you remember what Abraham Harriman did? He rented a room at the Ritz Hotel in downtown Paris at the Place Vendôme on a week-to-week basis. What did North Vietnamese do? They rented a villa outside of Paris with a 2.5-year lease. You think that affected the negotiations somewhat? I would think so. And we want to know how come the Paris peace accords didn't hold up. See, what am I saying to you about time? I'm saying to you, everything is going to happen here. Everything. I'm also saying to you that the other side that's talking to you, that's agreeing reluctantly to meet with you, seemingly quite relaxed, is churning inside. They're under stress and they're under pressure. They're masking it from you, always. And 3, your deadlines are probably more flexible than you realize. Who gives you your deadlines? Who imposes your deadlines on you? Yourself. We call that managing time often, very often. Your boss, a customer, someone gives you a deadline. Now, those deadlines are the product of a negotiation. Shouldn't you consider the possibility of once in a while going back to that person, that individual, or to yourself and saying, hey, if we move back the deadline, what would happen? See, what would the consequences be? I am not saying to you forego deadlines. No. I'm saying to you analyze deadline. Always say to yourself, what risk am I taking if I go beyond the deadline? How do I know I'm going to be penalized? And what is the certainty of that penalty? Be more flexible with respect to deadlines. Let me give you an analogy. What happens to people that file their income tax returns late? A paddy wagon pulls up and they are immediately incarcerated? Is that what happens? See, it really depends. How late you file, how much you owe. Some of you may still be waiting to hear. And then it depends upon whether you owe them or they owe you. See, if you owe them, then there's a penalty. There's an interest penalty. And I suggest that you check it out, that penalty. And you'll find that it's lower than the bank would charge you for the same kind of money. See, the issue is, if you're going to have a creditor, what do you want? The United States government at a very favorable rate, or a bank? You see? What if they owe you money? What happens then? There's no penalty. There's no penalty at all. They're lucky legally that they're not required to pay you interest. Yet you will see people. See, when the deadline comes, the 15th, they're rushing in. He said, too late. Give me the postmark. You know, a lot of those people have refunds coming. Many of those people file their returns so quickly that the mathematics is wrong, and they end up getting audited. See, why didn't they analyze the situation? I owe them. What's the risk? What's the penalty? I'll drop it off at my convenience when I make sure the mathematics is right. I'm not saying to you, forget about deadlines. I'm saying analyze deadlines. And that's very important. Remember, because everything is going to happen here. Concessions will be made here. Settlements will be made here. The third item we have been talking about is information. One of the reasons we don't get sufficient information in a negotiation encounter is we tend to see it as an event. And we talk about it as an event. See, we say, when will the negotiation begin? Well, it begins at a certain time. It begins over here. We have a starting point. Well, it'll start next Monday at 2 p.m. I say to you that negotiations is not an event. It's like performance appraisal or mental illness, if you pardon those analogies. When somebody has been declared mentally ill next Monday at 2 p.m., when did they actually become mentally ill? Does anybody believe that at 1:59 they were completely fine? At 2 p.m. they went totally bananas? I mean, is that realistic? So you and I know what mental illness is. It's a deteriorating condition. And it's hard to say when people actually, become mentally ill. But we create a legal fiction and we certify them as being mentally ill here. And negotiations is the same way, even though the analogy may be a little awkward. It's hard to say when it begins. Every one of you, as I talk to you, are involved in the process stages of negotiations with a whole lot of people. The events won't take place for some time yet. And if you can see it that way, you're going to be much better off. See, it is very difficult during this period of time to get information because people know they're negotiating. I'll tell you anything. And you always meet the people whose job is description tell them they're negotiators. But how about here? You don't meet the same people. And you walk around in your organization, you meet engineers, you meet secretaries, you meet clerks, you meet people in all different functions, manufacturing, managers. Those people don't perceive themselves as negotiators, and they give you a great deal of information. How do you get information in any encounter? Start early. The earlier you start, the better off you are. You can get more information. Speak to others that you won't see during the event. People in their organization, they'll tell you a great deal. 3, speak to others that have dealt with these people before. Even in your own organization, there are people that have negotiated with them before. And even in competing organizations, those people will tell you a great deal. Don't judge what people tell you right at the outset. So there's a tendency on the part of all of us to be very judgmental, withhold judgment. See, a little stupid, doesn't hurt. If you do these things, and if you watch your communication ratios, by that I mean you listen rather than talk. You ask questions rather than give answers. You read the cues rather than being a literalist. You will get a great deal more information. I'm not suggesting to any of you that you operate in this area and you ought to move here. That's an extreme. I'm saying just do this a little bit more. Move over 1% and 2%. Train yourself to ask questions, even when you think you know the answers, to listen a little bit better, and to be more sensitive to what they're really telling you. If you can do this and start early, you will gather more information. Now, not only during this period of time should you be gathering information, you also should be giving information. Why is it important to give information? For 3 reasons. Number 1, it is more blessed to give than to receive. Number 2, Carl is very bright. He will give me a little information, and he waits for me to reciprocate. See, he knows he's taking risks. If I don't reciprocate, he will dry up as a source. And so if I want to keep getting from Carl, I got to start giving. There's got to be shared or reciprocal risk. And the third reason why you want to give information to people is you tend to influence their expectation level. It takes a while for people to get used to any new idea, no matter how wonderful the idea is. If you spring a new idea on someone very close to the deadline, now remember this is our deadline, very close to the deadline, they say, I never heard of that, and they deadlock the encounter. You mention that same idea to people over here, now they still don't like it. You bring it up over here, no. You mention it here, no. Now you bring it up here. You know what they say? Oh, Dad, it's been around for a while. See, it takes a while for people to get used to a new idea. Recognize that principle of acceptance time. And so during this period of time, you're obviously going to try to gather information, and you're also trying to give as well. If you can do these 3 things, you have tremendously, maximize your ability to succeed in every single negotiation encounter. What?
Turn it off there. 4 more minutes of summary, and I'm not going to delay us on on our way out, I said I was gonna ask you around, but we're running out of time, and I don't wanna keep you late. I think that we all learned something. One of the things that I want you to walk away from it, all of us have more power than we think we have. And when we go into negotiation, understand that. Even if our organization doesn't make us feel that way, we have to understand we have more power. And the tools that he lined out there they're good common sense tools. Talks about them in his books. This video will be posted up on Canvas. You can share it. You can keep it. I bought the video, so it's old, but it's good stuff. I think in terms of what we need to know in order to dial up our game a little bit to be more successful. I want us as part of talent to development to teach our teams this stuff. We should win more negotiations as a company than we lose. We should learn how to do better as a company, put our best foot forward, put our best people, our best trained. Don't leave it to happenstance and accident. Get better and better and better at teaching our organization to negotiate more successfully. So we're going to wrap it at that. You have 3 sheets of paper to look at and bring back some suggestions when I see you on Thursday. We'll talk about how would you resolve those things. We're looking at human resource development on Thursday. We'll see you then. Be safe.